Welcome to Fiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendations for novels, comment below.
Please join my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/fictionaudiobook.
Chapter 225, Twisted. The beating heart, the yellowish-green liquid, the silently burning black flames, and the falling figure entered Klein's field of vision and etched themselves deeply into Klein's mind. The most dangerous mission he had encountered up to this date had been when he was dealing with the monster Moroi who had lost control to an unknown deity. Luckily, thanks to Selena's seed, the terrifying and dangerous monster had only resulted in severe injuries to the Beyonders on the mission. No one had to sacrifice their lives. The deaths of the Beyonders Klein had witnessed, including old Niels, were all due to them losing control. The murderer might be strange and indescribable or related to evil gods, but they had nothing to do with the missions they undertook. Now, he was looking at one of his partners being killed in action. The death was purely due to one mistake. Nighthawks were fighting against madness, but so were they also fighting against danger. There might never be an opportunity to make up for that one mistake. Klein's thoughts erupted with a boom. Apparently having taken a huge blow, he knelt down and lifted his right hand, firing successive shots at Madame Sharon. The silver demon hunting bullets pierced through the invisible threads and shot towards her head and transparent sleeping gown. Bang. 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 Suddenly, Madame Sharon appeared to be yanked in another direction by something, allowing her to successfully avoid Klein's manic shooting. Klein only managed to collect himself and regain the ability of rational thought when he finished firing the 5 bullets in his revolver, and the sound of the hammer striking an empty chamber entered his ears. His heart tightened. Without any time to reload, he tossed the revolver to the side and took out a stack of tarot cards. Pa. Madame Sharon's body moved to the side and saw a card fly past her, piercing deeply into the surface of the makeup table. She smiled, her beautiful brown eyes once again taking on a black luster. At that moment, her waterfall-like brown hair suddenly flailed into the air like it was lifted by an invisible force. Madame Sharon froze. She wanted to dodge, but she was too slow. Klein had tossed out a magician card, successfully pinning her hair to the wall. Pa. Madame Sharon forcefully tore away her hair and rolled forward, her body quickly vanishing from Klein's line of sight. Turning invisible again. Klein had a tarot card between his fingers as he slowly turned around while being alert of his surroundings. Suddenly, he realized why Madame Sharon had to give up her attack, and why she had slowed down. If the situation had developed normally, Klein would have had no choice but to use Azek's copper whistle to deal with this terrifying demoness. Yes. The captain must be around here. He felt anticipation. He looked around, his gaze instinctively falling on the window. At the same time, he made a judgment in his heart. Madame Sharon wants to flee. She knew that we still have a partner with the ability to drag her into a dream, but she was unsure if there would be other reinforcements from the Nighthawks, mandated punishers, or machinery hive mind. Even though she's powerful, there's no way that she can wipe out a team of Beyonders on her own. With that thought, Klein flicked his wrist, tossing the tarot card towards the window. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. He threw out 5 cards in succession, 3 sealing the window and the other 2 towards the door. Crack. Thud. Thud. Amidst the sound of shattering glass, 2 tarot cards dug into the ajar bedroom door, one after the other. As he expected, Klein heard the sound of dodging. He once again tossed cards out, making use of his clown's intuition to pinpoint where he should be aiming. The cards pierced through the air and rapidly advanced before drilling themselves into the sturdy wall. However, a figure was quickly outlined in the air. It was none other than the brown-haired Madame Sharon, who was in a translucent sleeping gown. The moment Madame Sharon was exposed, her eyes lost their focus, as though she was falling asleep standing. Captain. Klein scanned his surroundings but was in no hurry to throw his cards. This was because he knew that Madame Sharon would quickly break out of the dream. He had to deal fatal damage in these 2 or 3 seconds, or their opponent would escape. It was easy to escape from a nightmare when there was a huge distance between them. Bending his knees, Klein rolled forward diagonally. He went prone and extended his right hand, grabbing the edge of the spirit medium mirror that was facing upward. He then flicked his wrist before his reflection could appear in the mirror. He tossed sealed artifact 3-0271 towards Madame Sharon, mirror side facing her. Madame Sharon's body trembled. The color of her brown eyes was quickly restored as they once again found their focus. And awakening before her was a crystalline layer of sturdy frost that appeared on the surface of her body. However, she didn't see the card, nor the demon-hunting bullet approaching her. All she saw was a mirror, and that the mirror was reflecting her innocent, yet alluring beauty. That beautiful face in the mirror suddenly became contorted. Wrinkles, gashes of blood, and rotting spots appeared on her face. No. Madame Sharon let out a shrill cry as if she had just witnessed someone she loved die. Her skin quickly took on a green color as yellow pus flowed out the corner of her eyes. After a moment of suffering, a silent black flame burned outward from within Madame Sharon, as if she was trying to expel something. The black flames then condensed into a thick frost, as if it was creating a coffin for an eternal rest. The invisible threads finally took on a color that was visible to the human eye. They enveloped the frost, forming a gigantic cocoon. Thud. 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 Sealed artifact 3-0271 fell onto the ground and tumbled before stopping beside Madame Sharon's giant cocoon. At that moment, Dunn broke through the window frame and somersaulted into the room. He caught sight of Kenley, who had stopped breathing, and his expression sank. It was at this moment the cocoon cracked open. The coffin of ice crumbled an inch at a time as black flames turned into specks of light, dissipating into the surroundings. Madame Sharon's skin had regained its normal color. Her eyes showed fatigue, but she seemed normal. Her eyes reflected Klein, who was still sprawled on the ground. She also saw Dunn Smith, his finger pressed on his glabella with his eyes closed. A formless ripple spread outward from Dunn as Madame Sharon's eyelids drooped uncontrollably. Under Dunn's windbreaker were writhing, snake-like objects. Klein knew that the captain couldn't restrain Madame Sharon for long, just like when they were previously fighting Monster Bieber. Klein rolled forward again, grabbed his revolver, the one he had previously tossed onto the carpet. He grabbed 3 demon-hunting bullets with his left hand and familiarly stuffed them into the round chambers. Pa. Klein closed the cylinder and stood up, taking aim at Madame Sharon with both hands on the gun. He aimed at the center of her forehead. Bang. He controlled his body with the abilities of the clown and pulled the trigger. The silver demon-hunting bullet pierced through the air, accurately hitting the fixed target. A bloody gash appeared between Madame Sharon's eyes, but the bullet seemed to tear through multiple layers of obstruction, causing it to lose the bulk of its power, rendering it unable to pierce through the target's skull. Klein fired another 2 shots without hesitation when he saw Madame Sharon suddenly open her eyes. Bang. Bang. A rain of blood splattered amidst white dots. The stunning beauty that was Madame Sharon had become a mutilated corpse that would incite nightmares in every man. She had long run out of substitutes to use. Phew. Phew. Klein lowered his arms and panted heavily. Madame Sharon, with only half her head left, slumped onto the ground. She still had an exceptional figure, her skin still white and tender. Dunn straightened himself up and opened his eyes. He, too, lowered his hand from his glabella, his face a little pale. He wasn't injured, but he looked as though he had lost a lot of blood. If it wasn't for the fact that she wanted to kill a few people before she tried to escape, if it wasn't for sealed artifact 3-0271 reflecting herself by chance, we probably would have only been able to injure her. Dunn slowly walked forward to Klein's side, his voice unusually low. Without answering. Klein turned to look at Kenley, who was silently lying on the black ash. His thoughts turning bitter. Captain, Kenley. I know. Dunn replied with a raspy voice. I made a mistake. I was fooled by Madame Sharon. I didn't expect her to secretly escape from the dream. He paused, then he said in a serious tone, but you have to get used to this. It's normal for Nighthawks to die during missions. Perhaps the next one to die would be me. Klein fell silent, not knowing how to reply. Kenley still had his eyes open, staring blankly at the ceiling. May the goddess bless you. May you find true peace. Dunn walked over to Kenley's side and drew a crimson moon on his chest. He then squatted and closed his partner's eyes. May the goddess bless you. Klein also drew the crimson moon as he prayed silently in his heart. A few seconds later, he forcefully retracted his gaze and asked in a heavy voice, Captain, shall I channel her spirit now? Dunn nodded indiscernibly. Don't attempt to ask about the primordial demoness. That's very dangerous. I'll guard you and prevent any accidents from disturbing you. Klein didn't tarry. He took out the various ingredients and quickly set up an altar, starting the mediumship ritual. After reciting the incantations, he took a step back and used a dream divination. Madame Sharon's partners. Madame Sharon's partners. After reciting the statement 7 times, Klein entered a dream. He saw Madame Sharon's soul within the hazy world. He reached out to the transparent, ethereal soul, and the scene before his eyes changed. It was a night scene. Madame Sharon, who was wearing a long black robe, handed an ancient bronze book over to instigator Trissy. She laughed a little manically after hearing the latter's doubt over the term witch. Weren't you always curious? Curious about why our upper echelons are all female? Klein narrowed his eyes and didn't reply. His thoughts are already a well, deeper than it could have been. The scene immediately changed. Klein saw a vast hall with narrow windows all around the place, and a lady clad in a pure white robe. Her back was facing Madame Sharon as she said with a smile, we can reach sainthood as long as we advance towards the primordial. We can attain power, attain salvation, and avoid the end of days. Madame Sharon lowered her head and asked curiously, why must we become women? Is it because the primordial is a woman? Do women symbolize destruction and calamity? The lady whose back was facing Madame Sharon answered calmly, no, men are the same, they are the synonym of war. These are two similar pathways. Chapter 226, Corpse Stain. Many things spiraled in his mind, and amidst his suspicion, Klein saw that Madame Sharon's spirit had yet to disperse. He seized the opportunity to do another dream divination. This time, his divination involved Madame Sharon's true motive for killing John Maynard. After he recited it in silence, Klein entered a dream once again and saw a new scene. Madame Sharon held a glass of red wine which resembled blood. In her loose sleeping gown, she was pacing back and forth in her room. Finally, she drank the rest of the wine in one gulp, as though she had decided on something. The scene dispersed quickly, leaving Klein even more confused since Maynard's death looked like Madame Sharon had volunteered to do it without anyone's instigation. Weird. Klein muttered to himself and used another few divination statements. But the answers were no different. Seeing that Madame Sharon was growing transparent and illusory, signifying that she was going to disappear soon, Klein thought and made final contact with the dead spirit. Sequence Potion Formula of the Demoness Pathway. Sequence Potion Formula of the Demoness Pathway. Klein recited the new divination statement. With the aid of cogitation, he got into his dream very quickly. At first, he didn't want to do the divination because he felt that the Demoness Pathway only spread disaster and created pain. Even if he obtained a corresponding potion formula, he was unwilling to sell it to anyone and indirectly become a murderer. Then, he recalled another matter from before. With his understanding of the spectator potion, he had been able to suspect and verify that Daxter Guderian was a member of the psychology alchemists. So, in order to better fight against the demonesses in the future, he'd to learn more of the traits of their sequence pathway. After Hadoujen's death, Daxter Guderian has yet to contact me. I'm guessing the psychology alchemist sent some stronger members for an investigation, and he hasn't dared to make any moves. As Klein's thoughts flashed, he saw the dark hall again. He saw the woman in the holy white robe again. Madame Sharon hung her head low, and she could only see the other woman's legs, a pair of flawless legs. Soon, she heard a melodious voice. Pleasure, that is the name of the Sequence 6 potion, the goal that you are about to advance to. If you succeed, you'll be a demoness of pleasure. When pleasure is irresistible and impossible to break away from, it's a form of agony. This is also a maxim that you have to live by. As long as you complete your advancement, besides the enhancement of your various abilities as a witch, you'll also become more beautiful, making you better at seduction and providing unforgettable pleasure to the same or opposite sex during lovemaking. You'll be able to make strange threads like a spider and utilize them. Immediately following that, an ancient silver book appeared before Madame Sharon. After it was opened, there was the formula and ingredients placed separately. Main ingredients, a pair of succubus eyes, an adult black widow spider silk gland. Supplementary ingredients, 100 milliliters of purified water, 5 drops of black jimsonweed juice, the complete remnants of a succubus's hair, 10 grams of Phaenopotter fly powder, and 5 grams of real mummy ashes. The scene changed again. It was the same hall, the same long white robe, and the same woman with indistinguishable features. But now, the difference was that Madame Sharon had returned to her original state. She was now the young man in the picture from before. A melodious female voice reverberated in his ears. This is the name of the Sequence 7 potion, I'm sure you're surprised. Yes, I still can't believe it's called witch. Madame Sharon said in a rather agitated manner. Remember, if we want to get closer to the primordial, we have to be more and more like her. She's a woman, so we have to be women too, the melodious female voice replied. Either you give up or you accept. After you become a witch, you'll become a true woman, and your appearance and charm will be enhanced substantially. You'll have the ability to turn invisible and use substitutes. You'll gain a rudimentary mastery of various dark magic, you'll be skilled at disrupting the divination of others, and you'll also gain the favor of the black flame and icy frost. The main ingredients are every drop of an abyss demonic fish's blood and an agate peacock's egg. The supplementary ingredients are 80 milliliters of purified water, 5 drops of jimsonweed juice, 3 scales of a shadow lizard, and 10 drops of daffodil juice. Scenes continued to play, one after another, and Klein saw the instigator and assassin formula and understood their corresponding traits. Just as he wanted to continue the divination, Madame Sharon's spirit dispersed completely. Klein stopped the ritual and returned to reality. He packed up the ingredients, removed the wall of spirituality, and told Dunsmith about the outcome of his mediumship without holding back any information. Then, he expressed his suspicions on Madame Sharon's murder of Maynard. Pleasure doesn't require her to kill anyone of a higher rank or position in society. We need to investigate where Madame Sharon has been over the past few years and understand her origins. We need to look for the dark hall that you saw. Of course, this will need to be reported to the Holy Cathedral, and they can assign investigators accordingly. We can't leave Tingen as we wish. Dunn nodded slightly and looked around. He said, go to the first floor, check if those servants are still in deep sleep. If anyone is awake, bring them over and make them sign a confidentiality contract as per protocol. I'll be in charge of the second floor. He found a black cloth and covered the sealed artifact 3-0271. Upon hearing that, Klein suddenly understood why the intense battle hadn't brought the servants over. The captain had sent them into a deep sleep from the very beginning. Klein's body was still cold and stiff. He had to slow down and move forward in very, very light steps. When he passed the bedroom door, he extended his hand and pulled out the 2 tarot cards at the door. He wiped them and put them back into his pocket. After he left the room, he walked towards the stairway. After taking a few steps, he suddenly thought of a question. How would he make sure that the person was in a deep sleep? Check with divination one by one. Troublesome. The captain is a nightmare, he should be an expert in this. I'll have to ask him if he has any fast and simple methods. With this in mind, Klein turned around and walked towards the bedroom door, step by step, as he fought against the cold and stiffness in his body. At this moment, that one of their partners was killed. His conviction of turning Selena in for probation grew stronger. If she had been in this, would the destiny finally unfolds? Would Ince's omen come true? Even if she grew to hate me, at least the chances of any of it happening are lessened. Before he came close, he looked through the ajar door and saw the shattered pieces of the angled full-body mirror. There were still large shards of the mirror clinging to the frame, all the size of a palm. In the cracked mirror, Dunn Smith, in his black windbreaker, was kneeling beside Kenley's dead body, doing something. Suddenly, he lifted his head. His gray eyes were deep, and the corners of his lips were tainted with crimson blood. Crimson blood. Without thinking, Klein turned around, left the side of the door, and leaned his back against the wall. Chapter 227, Unaware. Klein held his breath with his back against the wall as he faced the darkness of the corridor. What's Captain doing? What's wrong with him? Was he drinking blood? Is this a sign of him losing control? Klein's mind was a mess, incapable of effective thought. Nearly 20 seconds later, Klein clenched his teeth. With the help of the control he had over his body as a clown, he silently made his way down the stairs. Later, he then intentionally took heavier footsteps and made his way back to the door of Madame Sharon's bedroom. Klein looked in to see the captain wrapping sealed artifact 3-0271 with the black cloth. His expression was serious, his face clean. It was as though what Klein had seen just now was only an illusion. Glancing sideways, Klein saw nothing abnormal with Kenley's body. It was the same as it had been. He inhaled and asked, Captain, how am I going to confirm if those servants are still asleep? I can't make an accurate judgment just based on spirit vision alone. They'll have various emotional reactions due to their dreams which will be reflected in the color of their auras. Dunn Smith fiddled with the spirit medium mirror and was silent for a few seconds. He said with a raspy voice, I'm sorry. I forgot about that. I've made too many mistakes tonight. There's no need for you to check, I'll confirm it. He lifted his hand and pressed his glabella, then he closed his eyes, allowing formless ripples to spread towards the first floor. It was crystal clear to a nightmare if anyone was asleep or not. Klein froze when he saw this. He looked down and bit at the insides of his lips. Captain, were you really drawing me away just now? What are you doing? Do you know what you're doing? He abruptly turned to look at the window, only to see the crimson moon hanging high in the sky, seemingly unchanged for thousands of years. After collecting himself, Klein used the cover of picking up his tarot cards, revolver, top hat, and other items to closely examine the corpses of Kenley and Madame Sharon. They maintained the same look as when they died, but their skin was turning pale at a rapid rate. They also had tinges of blue and black marks. It's a little weird, they seem to be missing something. Klein muttered to himself. He felt his hair stand on end due to the chilly wind blowing through the shattered window. At that moment, Dunn opened his eyes and said in a deep voice, they're all still asleep, but some of them are close to waking up. That's good, that's good. Klein looked at the captain, not knowing what he was saying. Dunn surveyed the surroundings and said, clean up the scene, then get someone from the nearest police station to come over. Oh, and make a trip back to Zutland Street and get Fry to come help out. Klein gave the captain a deep look and nodded with his teeth clenched. Okay. 36 Zutland Street. Selena sat on the edge of the bed looking outward the window and to the crimson moon. At this moment, it suddenly came to her that each time something cathartic would happen, she would instinctively gaze at the unusual moon, one that she remembered being white before. I wonder if this had anything to do with becoming a vampire once reaching sequence 7. Selena mused bitterly, feeling in the irony. Thud. 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 As her thoughts came to a close, she heard knocks on the door. It must be Leonard. In Leonard's assumption. Due to being tasked by the White Maiden, Selina would remain awake after some time to wait for him. If he did not receive any consent inside the room, he would have to return by tomorrow. Come in. Selina's soft, familiar voice muffled on the wooden pane. Leonard exhaled a relief and twisted the handle, helping himself to see Selina. She had just freshened up, she wore a white simple dress and her hair was tied to a bun. It made Leonard puzzled because sleeping with a bun hair would most certainly be a discomfort. Or that she's waiting. He simplified with deprecation. How are you holding up? Leonard smiled as he combed his hair back, then closing the door on his way. He held a brown folder in one hand. I'm fine. Selina mirrored his expression with gentleness. I don't feel like mutations are growing out of me. Or perhaps that's only because I'm awake. Hee hee. Leonard felt a little taken by her last remark. He cautiously asked, does your hair really flares up with red whenever you sleep? If Captain and Klein confirmed it. It's likely true. I've seen it myself. Selina answered. However, see this. She turned her head slightly to give Leonard a look. She added, it returns back. That didn't help easing Leonard. He was more inclined to inspecting Selina's state of mind. He sighed. Klein, he and I spoke privately. Leonard walked and took a chair right next to the drawer. He then waited for Selina to say, and what did you two talk about? Almost feeling agitated, evident in her tone. We discussed about ints. How your dreams often results in something real, like what happened with Moroi. I made him do a divination but it resulted negatively. It didn't said anything about you losing control. Frankly, it confirmed that you're fine. Then, why am I here? Selina asked. Why didn't he believe me? Mr. Knows-It-All figured that if the things Captain said regarding ints is true, then it's likely that you'll die in a line of duty. Call this desperation. Leonard was about to raise the soles of his feet to perch them onto the edge of the bed when he suddenly paused. Mind if I? Sure. Selina turned away toward the window. Then, she added without facing Leonard, Klein is desperate. Basically it. That was truly the only time I saw him over-explains himself. As if he's not there to convince me, but to justify himself. I almost pitied him. Leonard accepted the consent and lifted his feet to the wooden edge of the bed. What did he say? Asked Selina. Leonard recounted momentarily before smiling. He said since his preparations are done, he wants to find nodes in destiny that might relate to you. That way he can prevent something from happening. I don't totally understand what he's blathering about. But through the tone of his voice, each day that passed without any clues drives him insane. How so? Selina pressed. Notice how Klein is always busy. Or that he makes sure you get home with someone escorting you. Leonard listed. Yes, each time any one of us accompanies you in his stead, he would probe us if we notice something strange, like someone tailing you. Selina fell silent. I thought that's because Captain was monitoring me. Leonard chuckled, we're way past that. Now Klein is collaborating with him in making sure none of the other organizations would lay their hands on you. Selina's voice went soft and hoarse. Why? Isn't this too much of a treatment? No. It's the appropriate. After you sworn your duty, Captain became responsible of you and everyone's safety. That's why we admire him. Leonard explained, his voice turning affectionate. We are guardians, but also a bunch of miserable wretches who are constantly fighting against threats and madness. That excerpt from St. Cheney's also states camaraderie. That we are, is what unites us. Like what I reminded to Klein when he was becoming mulish. Selina mused without saying anything. Only after she let out a soft breath did she said, even if Captain has implications with his memory. He can be very cool at times. I'm glad I met everyone. She finally turned to Leonard and flashed a gentle smile. Leonard's parted lips curled up. Right. We're getting off track. Here. He handed Selina the folder before adding, in that are the results of the investigation with Megos. Her address, her acquaintances and relatives. If you discovered anything, feel free to tell me. I'll relay it to everyone else. That way you won't feel burdened. Why does it feel like you just want the credits? Selina narrowed her eyes first before loosening her expression. Thank you very much. Mr. Poet. Leonard scoffed playfully as he replied, good night. He stood up, and while his back faces Selina and as he walks toward the door, he waved a hand as a momentary farewell. Still acting like we're some sort of a trio protagonists. Selina can't help but chuckle. All right. Time to borrow the seed I gave you. She didn't mention about controlling the seed since it would only invite Leonard into another task. What if he assumed this is of the goddess's will? Then she would have to reward him 2 times. I can already picture him thinking of what to request. Sigh, please don't make that request too heavy. Selena muttered wistfully before getting back to bed. In the entertainment room, where most of the sleepless nighthawks are in before midnight thickens, Leonard, who had yet to continue investigating Lenivas, joined Royale and Sika with a game of poker just to ease his mind of the day. He was grinning after seeing multiple aces in his hands. Unbeknownst to him, the seed in the vial inside of his pocket grew a thread of root. It extended out and sneakily exited both the vial and his pocket. It rolled and got outside the company through the ajar oriel window of the room, intending to head to the next street. Behind the seed's control, Selena in the dream world held a dirt tablet in her hands. The contents were rather blurry, but the key details are highlighted. Megos lives in 23 Consale Street, districts near the harbor. This likely means that the mandated punishers handled the case, which is requisite to the Lenivas case. Selena laid out her thoughts first. Luckily, this information is distributed to the churches to aid against Lenivas. Otherwise, it will be harder to catch him. Megos was introduced to Lenivas by her aunt, Christina. At that moment, she pressed a finger to her chin. Selena recalled. Klein once mentioned that Megos visited him. In the case of the steelworks swindling, Christina brought her to him to divine the whereabouts of Lenivas. Though the result wasn't too affectionate with their circumstances, Lenivas courted and got Megos pregnant before he disappeared. This swindler who's in contact with Hudyuchin and had done a sinister ritual. Selena allowed the soil tablet melt in her hands as she said gravely, I've heard before, using pregnancy as a way to achieve rituals. From Isabel, who had yet to report anything to me. Then, his heart sank. I have to visit Megos and confirm. Consale Street. Crimson moon peaks from the steeples of high buildings. The seed rolled onto a unit and found a peculiar 3-story house. It had gray painted walls and juniper dormer roof with erected chimney. Some windows are double paned, the door was wide and it had intricate patterns associated with flowers and vines. This is 23 Consale Street. Selena made the seed jump with its thread-like vines and hop continuously until it reached a window. The latches are turned, it is locked. The seed turned and hopped about, taking in the house that had its own land brimming with grass and flowers. Finally, it saw the chimney. The reflexes of the seed does not have the limits of a human, merely by utilizing its lightweight body and long root can it deftly arrive at the top. Hence, it used the momentum of its hopping to take hold of the multiple joints of the house until it succeeded in seeing the chimney. Due to the time, the chimney was empty. Everyone should be asleep. It leaped into hole and used its vines again to safely travel down. It saw the ashes from when fire was alit. A charcoal wood inside an iron fence outside to prevent any mishaps while also having an iron poker. Now, it only needed to find Megos' bedroom and sneak in. First, it strode down the hall connecting to the fireplace in the living room. It climbed up the stairs, finally seeing rows of doors. There were signages there, written with names. Thanks to this, it quickly found Megos' bedroom at the farthest of the hall. Through the cracks of the door, it pried itself in, finding the nestled Megos laid in her bed with disheveled hair. Selena, inside the dream world, froze. What she was seeing, and because of the properties of the dream world, including the seed's built-in spirit vision, was a glowing shadow of a fetus inside Megos. There's a dark curtain, a heinous dim red halo-like glow around the fetus, and it bore just one slit eye. Then, it opened its eyes. Chapter 228, Seed Danger. Boom. Selena thoughts rang. The dream world formed a ring of flowers around her, to soothe it. She quickly recovered, but she felt the seed was being gripped by the shadows. She had to escape. Luckily, for whatever reason, the fetus went back to sleep. The seed suffered a dark blemish, and it rushed out of the crevice, back to the fireplace and outside. After exiting the unit, it rolled again, very fast into the street. In the entertainment room, Leonard had won 3 consecutive times. It slowly felt like he was leveraging these women in front of him. There is now about 12 solis in his side of the board. Though he felt penitent, he was smiling, figuring that it is best to return a few change at the end of the game. Then, just as Sika was about to draw cards for them, Leonard noticed a seed by the window. It was familiar and its roots are retracting back. Is that my? He instinctively fished out the vial from his pocket, that is now empty. Selena. You've been controlling my seed. Leonard instantly became anxious about his teammates noticing. He smiled and laughed very fervently. Sika and Royale exchanged a peculiar looks and the former said, just because you've been winning doesn't mean you have to rub it in. Heh. Leonard stopped, but that's because the seed had arrived right beside the soles of his shoe. He stooped down and quietly offered the vial to it. It naturally entered by itself. Did Selena use the seed to leave and visit Megos? Was the first thing that came to Leonard after he withdrew the vial back. In the dream world, Selina was panting audibly as her heart raced with the discovery. If she wasn't in the dream world. If she were to see it personally. The intense darkness would have consumed her. Thankfully, she was able to purify the dark blemishes on the seat as if she's dusting off her arms. But it didn't change the fact that a monstrous spawn is here in Tingen. If Megos were to give birth. Just thinking about it made Selina trembled, her mind teetering to the worst outcome. We have to stop it. We have to kill Megos' child. In an alleyway beside Blackthorn Security Company. The juvenile plant that had sprouted immediately with dark-tipped leaves grew exponentially by the hour. Soon, it had grown a stem, and from that stem are patterns of chains binding an incomplete person. At the same time, all over Selina's resting body are chains of the same pattern, flickering from being deep black to fading into her skin. But just as it flickered for the third time, her eyes fluttered open, and it halted altogether. Laid in the bed, Selina was sweating profusely and heart racing. She picked up the dry towel beside her and walked to the door. She paused in front of it. Afraid that she might be crossing a rule, breaching Klein's effort and worrying everyone in the company. As her fingers was about to touch the cold handle, Selina suddenly pulled away. Tomorrow. She placed another hand to her palm as she placed it closer to herself. Klein is already asleep. If I were to say more, Captain would become much more worried and so do everyone. I have to refrain. I can't act rash ever again. Swallowing a lump in her throat, she forced herself back to the bed. In the cold night, she couldn't sleep properly. Figuring that exhausting herself would do, she visited the dream world again for the last time today. In the Moretti residence. After folding the letter he wrote in concern for his superior state, Dunn Smith, Klein took out the copper whistle, put it to his lips, and blew hard. In the silence, illusory white bones came flying up from the desk like a fountain and finally formed a huge monster. It was almost 4 meters tall, still covered in a faint glow. Its head was still poking through the ceiling, looking no different from before. Klein flicked his wrist and threw the letter. The white bone monster caught the letter and gripped it tight. Klein blew the copper whistle again and saw the messenger break into illusory white bones and fall like rain before vanishing through the surface of the desk. Klein felt much calmer after finishing everything, but he didn't stop trying. He moved the chair back and stood up. He then walked 4 steps counterclockwise and entered the world above the gray fog. The lofty palace and the ancient modeled table appeared before his eyes, as though it would stay the same for tens of thousands of years. Klein sat at the fool's seat of honor. Then, he took out the spirit pendulum from his left sleeve and conjured a yellowish-brown goatskin and a fountain pen in front of him. He wanted to divine multiple things. Concerns about Insanguil and the captain. He needed to determine and believe Selina fast. After some thought, Klein wrote the first divination statement. What Selina said about Insanguil is true. He held the pendulum with his left hand as he recited the divination statement 7 times. He closed his eyes and entered a cogitation state. After a few seconds, he opened his eyes and they returned to their normal color. He looked at the topaz pendant, and immediately, his expression sank. The pendulum was spinning clockwise. The rotation was relatively fast. Klein gritted, then contemplated about another sentence. Selina is in danger was written in ancient Hermes. Similarly, it bore confirmation at a paced rotation. The atmosphere in the gray fog became grim and dark. On the table, laid 2 goatskin parchment that independently contain a sentence. Insanguil's location. Insanguil's plans. He put away the topaz pendant and leaned back into the chair. He recited the divination statement as he entered a dream with the aid of cogitation. In the blurry illusory world, he couldn't see or discover anything. There was nothing except gray fog. This meant insufficient information. The divination failed. Klein woke up. He was silent. Then, multiple parchments appeared out of thin fog, each with common written names, Insanguil. All of it, down to the most petty of descriptions, resulted in nothing but thin strips of gray fog that remained aqueous. Klein was getting sick of seeing it. Will Selina die? Relatively positive. Will Selina live? Relatively positive. Turning clockwise. Again and again and again. Damn it. Why? Klein slammed a fist onto the armrest of his chair. The dark strands of his hair got onto his face. If only he had seen Insanguil personally. If only he could enter Selina's dream. If only he was in Selina's shoes for a moment. He could have easily divined Insanguil's whereabouts. Expose him or hunt him down himself. Klein has resources. The blood-curdling charm would be his ace in killing Insanguil, assassinating him. Just to end that terrible destiny. However, what pains and appalled him is that even in the gray fog, he couldn't find Insanguil. At this moment, Klein completely slipped about Dunn Smith. At some point he finally chose to see this in another angle, the sealed artifact 0-08. At least he knew that it exists. He knew of its danger but not its actual appearance, nature, or properties. Klein had to try. Everything at this point is as crucial and important. Information regarding sealed artifact 0-08. The divination failed, again. Klein is aware the slim chance, but it is still devastating to see it unfold. Pant. 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 Klein was breathing loudly, helplessly, which frustrates him to the extreme. Hand pressed against his forehead as he contemplates what actions to take next. The captain's condition. He almost forgot. He made one last modification, the reason for Dunsmith's abnormality, onto one of the goatskin parchment that remained. Once again, it lacked information. Klein sat onto his high-back chair, silently overseeing the bronze table. The next morning, Klein arrived early at the Blackthorn Security Company. His eyes were vacant and dull, he was shown with obvious signs of weariness and fatigue. The nagging of his siblings why Selina didn't return haunted him even in his sleep. Selina moved out already. You're lying, Sis said she'd stay. Fallacy is here. Klein, where's Selina? Did you had a fight with her? Just tell us. Klein couldn't stop thinking about the tens of attempts at determining Nsangwil's whereabouts that at some point, he reached his second floor and stopped before the health room, where Selina is admitted. He snapped awake to realize where he is. Klein gulped and prepared for a lecture. He knocked. Thud. 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 But there was no response. She must be asleep. Klein was just about to turn away when he heard a lovely, familiar voice. Who is it? Right away. Klein replied, it's me. Then, silence grew louder. It was only broke when after 20 seconds, behind the door, Selina's voice said, stay there. I'll open it. Click. The door swung open inwardly in the room and Selina, her hair cascading from her shoulders, looked up to see Klein, completely out of shape. There was dark circles around his eyes. He was pungent with sandalwood, smoke, and herbs that Selina could name the materials he had with him. She smiled gently, I was just away for a day, and you already look like this. Klein was stunned, his eyes widened. What he expected to be a lecture, anger, disappointment, or coldness from her turned into something he had always known. You're not mad. Selina exhaled faintly as she extended her hand to touch Klein's blazer. Why would I be mad if you came here like this? She fixed the flares of his blazer, took hold of his bow tie that appeared fastened with indifference. The bow tie came loose. Sigh. Selina half closed her eyes and focused onto tying the bow tie back. So. Why did you came here? One knot turned. Klein said, I came here, without thinking, then I knocked when I suddenly remembered you're here. Selina made another knot. What happened yesterday? We entered Madame Sharon's house. Kenley was killed. Klein said, he felt heavy in the chest. I tried divining Nsangwil. But I. Then, his voice was faintly trembling, I couldn't divine him. I can't find anything remotely close to him. I wanted to believe you, but. Kenley was killed. Selina interrupted as her eyes turned sullen. This is normal. There's a strong chance his captain had already said this to you. And about Nsangwil. She lifted a warm smile. Do your best. I'll do mine, so today again. Keep yourself safe. Casted by the sunlight. Selina let go of the neatly tied bow tie and her silhouette went for Klein's face. Without saying anything. She closed the door. Klein stood there. Heavy in his chest, but also determined. If he wanted to find Nsangwil, he'll have to simply assume the coincidences was caused by him and trace it. The most recent coincidence was with Eugen, connecting to a ritual with Lenivis and finally Megos. After an unknown time had passed. Selina heard another knock on the door, followed by the voice of Rosen checking in. Selina. Here, your breakfast. Right. I had to tell Captain and Klein about Megos. At that moment, her blood run cold. I forgot to say it Klein earlier. Chapter 229, postponed. The next morning. Klein finished his shift of the Cheney's Gate. He used the time to visit the Alwa County Police Station as soon as possible to request about the investigative reports of Lenivis' case. He took the time to read it and confirmed where Megos live, in 23 Consale Street. That was 5 districts away from the docks. Without wasting any time, Klein boarded a carriage and stopped somewhere in Consale Street, likely where fish vendors flocked. He quickly spotted a gray-walled house with a multifaceted dormer roof. He prepared his badge and proceeded to knock on the door. Excuse me. Alwa Country Police Inspector Klein Moretti. Klein presented his badge to a woman with wrinkled face, possibly Magos's grandmother. "Young man, what is it?" asked the lady. Klein withdrew his badge and said, "I came to see Magos and discuss a few things with her." "Mind if I talk to her?" "Dear, even if I allowed you to, Magos isn't here," the lady bitterly said. "What?" Klein was slightly taken aback. "Then, where is she?" The lady thought before saying, "She's with Christina, out on a stroll." "Where?" Klein became curious. Out of all the times, it had to be now that they went out. They didn't mention where they're going." "Maybe at the park," the lady answered. Klein was disappointed inside when he heard this. Still, he gave a thorough goodbye with polite tone. Then set off again for the park. When he got there, it was already turning dusk. He searched but still couldn't find the two ladies. Where could have they gone? Klein creased his eyebrows and diligently checked and surveyed the people. However, he received negative replies. This continued until noon was upon the city. Klein had no choice but to postpone. But on the side note, this time the coincidences are a chain of causes. Zangwill is preventing him from reaching Magos. In the second floor of Blackthorn Security Company, Selina woke up with her red hair quietly receding. She was unable to inform everyone again of the information she found yesterday. That Magos is carrying a spawn. The Nighthawks that were monitoring her have been Fry, Sika, and Royale. All except Klein and Leonard. What is happening? Why now of all times? She felt like fate was toying with her again, just like what she felt during the chase. Then, it occurred to her. Could it be that her finding Blackthorn Security Company is also a coincidence? A product of Zangwill? Her thoughts turned chaotic as she heard Sika's voice. "Selina, I know you feel devastated by this. But please, get through this. I still have unchecked drafts that requires your opinion." Selina felt an aching presence in her heart. That one of her close friends are deprived of what is truly happening. Having just fished his keys to open the door to his house, Klein saw the maidservant Bella wiping the dining table while his sister, Melissa, who was dressed up, and his brother, Benson, came downstairs. "Where you going?" Klein asked with a colorless expression. Benson tugged his sleeves and said, "Sounds like someone who had only just been left alone for a day would ask." Klein was a bit stunned. Having explained that Selina would need some time in the company to be allowed to leave. Melissa quelled the bitterness in her tone as she explained, "Today is the first day that, the return of the Count, will be releasing tickets for sale." Hearing that, Klein forced smile and took off his hat. "I've been too busy recently. I totally forgot about it. How's Sis Selina? When will she come back?" asked Melissa in return as she adjusted her fishnet bonnet. Klein's expression froze as he slowly said, "I visited her. She won't be back until next week. Don't worry, sis. I've already found what Zangwill is up to," he added in his heart. "MHM." Melissa looked at him with concern and said, "Your breakfast is in the kitchen. Eat it and get some sleep. Benson and I thought that since we're going out, we might as well drop by St. Selena Cathedral to have Massachusetts." "All right." Klein waved and bade his brother and sister farewell. When he turned for the kitchen, he suddenly found the scene heavy and painful. The simple breakfast wasn't bad, but it's unusually bland. When he was done, he returned to his bedroom. After he did the preparatory work, he took 4 steps counterclockwise and entered the world above the gray fog. He saw that justice and the hanged man's corresponding crimson stars were burgeoning and shrinking faintly. He extended his right hand and emanated his spirituality. Then, blurry images formed before Klein's eyes. Miss Justice's prayer sounded in his ears. "I pray for you to listen. Because of the Kalangos incident, my father hired a beyonder to protect me. There are also others who are watching over me secretly. It wasn't easy for me to finally find an opportunity to pray to you. I would like to apply for leave from the gathering next week. I believe this will pass soon." Klein subconsciously glanced at the blurry image. The image was filled with fog, and there seemed to be a huge bathtub with rippling water. Miss Justice was wrapped in a bath towel. He retracted his gaze and started listening to the hanged man's prayer. His description was different from Justice's, but he was making the same request. He too needed to ask for leave due to the aftermath of Kalangos' death. Klein nodded slightly and responded to their prayers respectively. "I'm aware." Then, he sent a message to the sun and the lover's crimson star. The upcoming gathering will be cancelled temporarily. City of Silver. Derek Berg was paying attention in the training field. The sky above his head was still dark, with occasional flashes of lightning that lit up the sky. Suddenly, his vision went blurry before he saw the thick fog and the ancient palace that looked like the home of a giant. He also saw Mr. Fool, who sat in the depths of the gray fog. The upcoming gathering will be cancelled temporarily. His voice reverberated, but the view before Derek had already returned to normal. He wasn't shocked at such a magical incident because Mr. Fool contacted him in this manner to remind him before every gathering. Derek looked up at the woman in front of him subconsciously, a member of the City of Silver's 6-member council, Shepherd Lloydia. This terrifying expert kept switching between a smile and being aloof. She told every young man at the training field that they would join the patrolling troop soon and rid the dark monsters in the vicinity. That wouldn't be training anymore. Elder Lloydia didn't notice anything strange. She seems to be getting weirder. Is it because there's a high-sequence Beyonder's evil spirit among the souls that she grazes? Derek thought. In Blackthorn Security Company, health room. Suddenly, her vision went blurry before he saw the thick fog and the ancient palace that looked like the home of a giant. Selena also saw Mr. Fool, who sat in the depths of the gray fog. The upcoming gathering will be cancelled temporarily. His voice reverberated, but the view before Selena had already returned to normal. Gathering cancelled. Selena felt a little disappointed that she will not be able to ask help from others indirectly. Perhaps it's for the best. Klein returned to his bedroom, threw himself into bed, and quickly fell asleep. He dreamed about what had happened these past few days. Suddenly, he felt like he was being shaken by someone, and he suddenly woke up. Klein opened eyes and saw a gigantic white bone hand. The hand paused and threw the letter on the bed. Then, it vanished into thin air. Mr. Isaac's reply. Klein grabbed the letter and opened it. I thought about a few possibilities regarding the scenario you described, and I remembered a few things about vampires and mutants. Natural vampires were already on the brink of extinction before the dragons and giants bowed out of the stage of world history. Later on, they might occasionally be discovered. The vampires we usually talk about, as well as those mentioned in folklore, are more similar to Beyonders. I recall that the name of a potion in a particular pathway is called vampire. If your superior is now in a half-insane state, then it's very likely that he mistakenly consumed such a potion. The result of mixing two potions from different pathways makes a half-insane state a certainty. Yes, I vaguely remember the pathway of the Evernight, which is also the sleepless pathway as you know it, can be interchanged at high sequences with the pathway of death and the pathway of giants. But it doesn't include the vampire pathway. Of course, we cannot rule out the possibility that your superior might have accepted it willingly. After all, vampires have a long life, an exceptional constitution, and excellent looks. When compared with these benefits, accepting a state of half-insanity is reasonable. Klein froze when he read the letter. He didn't expect Mr. Isaac to provide him with this much information. His thoughts delved deeper as he went silent. The captain is perfectly fine usually, other than his poor memory. He doesn't show any signs of half-insanity. I can rule out the possibility of him consuming the vampire potion. Mr. Isaac has recalled quite a number of things recently. Could the creeping hunger have really stimulated his memories? Klein nodded and continued reading the letter. Mutant isn't the name of a particular species. It's more like the description for many similar creatures. Under normal circumstances, they're no different from an ordinary human, but there is an innate, suppressed, twisted desire in their hearts. This desire erupts when they come into contact with a certain scene or object. They become monsters, succumbing to their desires for blood and massacre. After everything settles, they will return to normal again. They become slightly more merciless and unfeeling after each time their desires erupt. This will continue until their souls are completely twisted. The only example of this that I can recall is the werewolf. They're similar to humans for the most part, and they cannot be distinguished using most Beyonder abilities. But, during the full moon, the twisted desires in their hearts intensify, and their bodies also change accordingly. Your superior might be a potential mutant. The death of your teammate might have triggered his true nature. These are all my personal guesses. I cannot guarantee that there are no other possibilities since I haven't gotten all my memories back. Perhaps your theory of this being a precursor to losing control can also explain this. There's no saving him whether he has consumed the vampire potion, or if he's a mutant. Of course, many people have theorized that mutants were originally ordinary human beings, but were put under a strange curse or corrupted by some evil god or devil, and, thus, transform into a different monster under certain circumstances. Also, I'm not too sure if you can treat him when you notice the warning signs of losing control. I would advise that you report this directly to your superior and hope that there's still time. Klein looked gravely at the desk after placing the letter down. He slipped into deep thought. He had to admit that the theory of a mutant was a very possible one, but he couldn't eliminate the possibility that it was a warning sign to him losing control. Let's wait for Madame Daly's reply. Klein can't be bothered having simultaneous things occur in his mind. He burnt the letter using his spirituality and prepared to leave. But as he was about to, he suddenly fell lulled into sleeping. Captain is pulling me to sleep. Curious if this concerns something important, Klein used cogitation to put himself to sleep. In the hazy world, Klein was suddenly jolted to his senses. He knew that he was dreaming. He then saw Dunn Smith and his black windbreaker appear in front of him. Responding in a manner congruent with a normal dream, Klein gave a delayed greeting, "Good morning, Captain." Dunn nodded slightly and said, "Leonard found a clue when he was investigating the Lenevis case. He needs your help. The mystery prior that the Holy Cathedral sent over won't arrive until tomorrow morning because of a train fault." "All right," Klein replied in a fleeting voice. Dunn thought for a moment before adding, "There's no need for you to return to Zutland Street. Head to 62 House Street directly. Leonard will be there waiting for you. It's been hard on you." The moment he finished his sentence, Klein's dream shattered. Klein instinctively opened his eyes. House Street. Isn't that the area where the Divination Club, my classmate Welch, and the member of the Aurora Order lived? Another coincidence. Klein thought gravely as he got up slowly. He washed up in the bathroom before changing into a white shirt, brown vest, and black windbreaker. He then picked up his hat and went down to the living room. It wasn't 11 yet, and Benson and Melissa hadn't returned home. Klein informed Bella that he was going out and that she didn't need to prepare lunch for him. He then took a public carriage to House Street and saw the messy-haired midnight poet, Leonard Mitchell, whose hair exuded beauty, waiting for him in at Building 62. Leonard was still in a thin white shirt despite the chilly September weather. He had paired it with beige pants. He swept his green eyes at Klein. This might be the building rented by Lenevis under a false name. "How did you figure it out?" Klein asked. Leonard pointed to his head. "Since you found a clue from Hood Eugen and suspected that Lenevis was likely connected to that member of the Aurora Order, the cloth merchant Sirius Arapes, I had to change my line of thinking after my normal investigations revealed nothing. I started investigating the Aurora Order. The previous report told me that Sirius had interactions with many of the residents on House Street, so I searched every one of them and found a problem with this one." "What problem?" Klein posed another question. Leonard raised his brows. "An obvious problem. The guest here appears very rarely. He claimed to be going to the southern continent to do business after Hannes Vincent's death and never returned. His records are very realistic, and the police didn't discover anything. This could only be a coincidence." Klein creased his eyebrows intensely. "Yes, a coincidence." Leonard nodded solemnly and added in a way that felt casual. "But when I showed the residents around here Lenevis's picture, an old man felt that he looked similar to the resident at number 62, other than his different glasses." He took out a black and white photograph from his pocket. Klein nodded without saying anything. The intent was mutual. He entered 62 House Street with Leonard, and at Leonard's request, he started to divine if there were any hidden compartments or secret chambers. The result was yes. The secret chamber or hidden compartment in this building. Klein wrote down another divination statement. He took a seat on the sofa and closed his eyes as he recited the statement. 7 times later, he entered a dream. His vision was blurry. In the blurry world, Klein saw a wooden bookshelf. He saw rows upon rows of books. He saw that one of the books had been taken away. He saw the wooden surface beside the book open, revealing a hidden compartment. The scene quickly disappeared as Klein opened his eyes and told Leonard, in the study. Klein wound the topaz pendulum around his wrist and followed Leonard into the study. He saw the wooden bookshelf he had seen in his dream. "Pull out that book, the place it's covering has a hidden compartment." Klein pointed at the book nearest to the sides. "So it's here. I couldn't find anything when I searched the place, and I had no choice but to return to Zutland Street to request for help," Leonard grumbled as he walked over. He pulled out the book Klein had pointed out. After searching the area, he finally found the mechanism to open the hidden compartment. A letter lay silently in the hidden compartment. A letter. Lenevis hid a letter here. Klein felt an omen from this. After he divined to see if there was anything dangerous within the letter and received a negative answer, Leonard picked up the letter and opened the unmarked envelope. Leonard pulled out the letter within and unfolded it. Klein leaned forward to get a look of its contents. All he saw were the first few paragraphs of the letter. "Ha ha ha, congratulations. Congratulations on finally finding this letter. This means that you're not too stupid, nor too slow. You qualify to take part in this game of life and death that I've designed. Child laborers that die before their time. Factory workers who seldom live past 10 years after entering the factory because of their working conditions. Female workers who risk severe illnesses for a meager salary. I see boundless resentment surrounding every factory, turning the surroundings oppressive and gloomy. This is the worst of times, and also the best of times. Our game shall take place under such a setting. Fools, prepare yourselves, I'm going to issue you a hint." Chapter 230, Game of Insanity. Ladies and gentlemen, the hint is that I've placed a bomb in Tingen, a bomb that will grow stronger by day, as time pass. Seek it and finish it before it explodes. If you lose the game, there will be a boom, and the entire city of Tingen will be reduced to a ruin. Trust me, I'm not lying at all about this. Lenevis, who enjoys giving his friends pleasant surprises. For a normal person, this letter might seem like a lunatic's words. However, for Leonard and Klein, it was an omen. The latter crumpled the letter in his hand and said solemnly, "Stronger by day." Then, Leonard added in a deep voice, "A bomb." What's the meaning of this? Klein's expression tightens by seconds. What is something that grows each day? As time passes, Leonard's eyes suddenly widened. Something that grows. That means it's developing. Something about child laborers that die before their time, factory workers who seldom live past 10 years after entering the factory because of their working conditions, female workers who risk severe illnesses for a meager salary. Boundless resentment surrounding every factory. There all must be a cruise. What is something that is developing that is remotely related to Lenevis? At that moment, both of their faces paled, a nameless horror was clinging tightly inside their chest. Lenevis's child. Gestating by Megos. Klein withdrew the letter and secured it to his pocket. Then, in silence he turned back to the hallway. Following him closely behind is Leonard. In their minds, they now have a node in putting a stop to Nsangwil's plans. Finding and killing the fetus inside of Megos. Report to the captain immediately. As soon as they went back to 36 Zutland Street, Klein saw two familiar faces, one voluptuous and one scrawny. They were Maynard's wife and sister. They were still in black dresses and black hats. The fine checkered black gauze concealed their faces. The two ladies were chatting with Roseanne, and when they suddenly saw Klein's return, they turned around and walked forward. "You really are the cream of the crop in this industry." Mrs. Maynard nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "I'm very pleased with the outcome and am also impressed with your work approach. Here's the reward that you deserve." The scrawny woman passed a light brown paper bag to Klein. It was filled with thick stacks of cash. There were 10-pound notes, 5-pound notes, 1-pound notes, and also 5 soldi and 1 soldi. "It's a total of 230 pounds, the scrawny lady stated simply. "Hand them to Roseanne." But Klein went through them in a hurry. Leonard was also seen unusually serious by the time the two disappeared to a corner. Through the partition, inside the captain's office. "How was it? Did you find any clues?" Dunsmith closed his document, lifted his head, and looked at Klein and Leonard with his deep gray eyes. However, his expression sank when he decoded their faces. Frayed, solemn and deeply agitated. They looked as if they were about to report something catastrophic. Regrettably for Dunn, who hoped that was only his mind playing with him, heard Klein say, "Megos fetus a bomb." Dunn fell into confusion. However, his eyes fell completely black, as if reflecting a tampered lake. "What's the meaning of this?" In response, Leonard handed him the letter. It had multiple rugged outlines due to Klein's hands crumbling it, but it didn't stop Dunn from reading the contents. "This is a lunatic's words," was his most natural conclusion. But Dunn added, "But this is also another coincidence." "Tell me what Selina said again." Klein's heart eased for a bit, but his anxiety still loomed. He answered, that Nsangwil could be the manufacturer of coincidences. Dunn slipped into a deep, serious thought before he finally said, "Let's find Megos." The two Nighthawks couldn't have been more glad by how quick their captain caught on. But just as they prepared to leave, Dunn retrieved his coat and said, "Take a look at this first." Leonard and Klein turned to the table. A document laid there with the seal of the mandated punishers. Initial investigation of the Carter Works. Vagrants have been seen being fostered and smuggled into vessels for distant voyages. Reasons remained unknown. Target destination remained unknown. Second attempt. Carter's office contains a safe. Inside are jewelries, mentioned in his notebooks for the purpose of fleeing Tingen. A charm in the form of a bracelet was at the center. Divination experts claims it records whatever is near it. In the basement, there's a painting resembling the office. It had not distinct properties except for a tree. Third and last attempt. Under the Nighthawks report regarding the Divine Light of Lower Street, we've dispatched the previous team to scout. Nothing out of the ordinary was discovered in contrast to the recent attempt. However, the painting in the basement now had multiple content. The scene of Carter's office had an altar filled with a tree bearing dark-tipped leaves. On the wall there was an additional painting that stood out from the rest of his license, portraits and navy clothes. It was a painting, a bloody tapestry of screaming faces. The divination experts confirmed they're the lost souls of the affected people, witnessing the divine light. Klein's pupils constricted. They completely forgot about the 30 deceased citizens of the lower street soon after the 7-day hymn. Iance wasn't planning on just one linear event. He's orchestrating multiple at once. At this moment in time, Dunn had finally dressed up to leave. He took his top hat and cane and exited the room. Leonard tugged Klein out of his stupor and both tailed the captain. However, when they returned to the reception desk, their blood suddenly run cold. There was a visitor at the entrance. She was a young lady, in her 20s at most. She was in a ruffled hat and loose dress. She had lovely facial features, blonde hair, green eyes, and also a depressed yet silent temperament. She was quite a beauty. The most eye-catching thing about her was her stomach that bulged out. She looked like she was more than 7 months pregnant. Klein was stunned, agitated, and completely frozen. Suddenly, he heard Leonard say in fear, "Miss Megos." Then, as Megos heard Leonard's voice, she looked over at the three of them vacantly and replied politely, "Hello." Klein was feeling death's door. If their assumptions are right, there's a growing bomb inside Megos, the fetus, Lenivus's unborn child, the perdition child. At the same time, the seed in Leonard's vial was wriggling. As dark blemishes began to appear in spots again. Behind it, Selina felt a looming disaster. The extreme coincidences left Megos into their front door. Megos touched her stomach and smiled faintly. Somehow or other, I suddenly thought of coming to Zutland Street and suddenly thought of coming up to take a look. This isn't Zangwill's doing. Klein grit his teeth and suddenly recalled that he hadn't managed to activate his spirit vision and check on Megos' situation previously. Hence, he lifted his teeth and was about to tap his left molars. He wanted to inspect what the bomb looks like, if they can defuse it. Just then, a series of thoughts screamed through his head in increasing intensity. Don't look. Don't look. Don't look. You'll die. You'll die if you look. You'll die if you look. Klein stood rooted on the spot like a statue as his forehead was covered in cold sweat. It was like having a deep and heavy nightmare that he nearly couldn't wake up from. After nearly 20 seconds, Klein finally shook off his paralysis. He looked sideways at Leonard and realized that the midnight poet was also covered in cold sweat, and his eyes were filled with horror. Meanwhile, Dunn was already about to draw his revolver and recite incantations. At this very moment, Klein had an influx of possibilities crumbling into his mind. An entry in Emperor Roselle's diary: "I started the Industrial Revolution with my own hands and personally ushered in the age of steam and machinery, but this will only become the hotbed for the descent of an evil god upon this world." He felt scenes flashed before him. Selina will die. Deities want her. Her blood pools the scene. No. Selina won't die. I won't let it happen. A spawn of some evil god won't descend into this world. I can't allow Hyugen to use his psychiatrist power to help Lenivus fool Megos and use her as a spawning vessel in her semi-unconscious state. I can't. Then, Klein's thoughts took a sudden halt. Don't look directly at God. Chapter 231, Stay Calm. Klein instinctively reached for his pockets. He held the flaring sun charm in one hand and Azek's copper whistle in the other while reserving his share of the blood-curdling charm. Suppressing the fear in his heart, he entered a half-cogitation state and blocked out his feelings of worry and didn't leave anything to a chance. Right now, they need to evacuate. Selina especially. He turned and shot a look at Leonard Mitchell, then tipped his chin toward Megos. He then controlled his expression with his clown abilities and smiled at Megos. Do you want coffee, black tea, or nothing at all? Megos stroked her stomach as if she was listening to something. A cup of warm water. I suddenly thought of chatting with you guys about Lenivus. I have the feeling that you know a lot. Klein's face almost contorted if not for the clown powers. He saw that Leonard stepped in and asked, where did that feeling come from all of a sudden? He, the ambivalent poet, was no longer the frivolous guy that he usually was. His smile had turned rather stiff. Megos suddenly giggled. My child told me. He knows a lot. He's very smart. Klein almost cursed at the tip of his tongue. However, when he turned, he saw that Dunn already left. That's exactly what I'd like to talk about. We want to have a chat with you about Lenivus, said Leonard. He clasped his hands and pointed to the sofa. Behind the receptionist's desk, Roseanne looked on in confusion. She suddenly realized that she didn't need to do anything. Klein scurried in the corridor. Through the partition, he suddenly saw Dunn rushing about to head down the stairwell to the basement. Captain, he called. He paced faster and caught onto him. Dunn's expression was rigid. His eyes deepened drastically as he told Klein, inside Megos' belly is a spawn of an evil god. I know. What do we do? Klein gripped the handle of his cane. He heard the captain's solemn voice. I'll ask for assistance from the Holy Cathedral immediately. Let's hope that the baby in Megos' stomach can still wait. Of course, we can't just sit back and do nothing. Have you told Leonard to keep Megos calm and keep her company? Notify Mrs. Oriana, Roseanne, and the rest. Get all the non-combatants to evacuate. I'll head to the back of Cheney's gate after I send the telegram. We have to prepare for the worst, which is if Megos' baby is born before the arrival of reinforcements from the Holy Cathedral. As captain of the Tinjin Nighthawks, I have the authority to use St. Selena's ashes during emergencies. St. Selena's ashes. The ashes of a high-sequence beyonder. The core seals within Cheney's gate. Klein's worries didn't ease a bit. He felt he was forgetting something. I'll also include the coincidences. Dunn added suddenly. Their steps echoing loudly. What are they again? Klein was reminded. The image of the building with the red chimney appeared in his mind. He nodded and said, the clue to the Antigonus family's notebook in the house opposite the kidnapping, Ray Bieber who didn't make it out of Tingen in time, Hannes Vincent exposing himself because of a coincidence, and a member of the Aurora Order lost his life because he chanced upon me, etc. Captain. I think it is true. Int Zangwill will soon appear. Dunn nodded and didn't say another word. There's another thing. Klein solemnly added. Marvik. He was an accomplice of Ruther Hudsman, one of the vampires who we've seen disintegrate. I am perplexed how, but he could quite possibly possess the meteorite. Then, it occurred to him. Int Zangwill must have planted it for him to take. He must have been calibrating his plans for another reason. The meteorite was gone before we made an autopsy of the house. Then it was used to paint many people in the painting inside of Carter Works. But why? Klein came to a dead end through reasonings. I'll add it. Dunn turned from the intersecting path right to the Cheney's gate. Klein slowed down and turned. He didn't waste any more time and went straight for the accountant's room on the opposite side. Mrs. Oriana was preparing the budget for the last 3 months of the year. She wanted to complete it in advance just in case the captain forgot about it again. When she saw Klein enter, she greeted him with a smile. Lad, what claims do you have to submit today? Klein exhaled. Mrs. Oriana, we will be on vacation today. Go back home immediately. Oriana froze for a while, looking at the serious face before her in a daze. A few seconds later, she stood up in a fluster. All right. Klein added in a hurry, help me inform the rest of the clerks in the office and the armory. I'll inform Roseanne. Yes. Oriana didn't even pack. She grabbed her handbag and hurried out of the accounting office. She turned and stared at Klein after entering the corridor. She drew a crimson moon near her chest and said, all of you will be blessed by the goddess. Thank you. Klein replied in silence. As he made his way past the partition, there's always something that's been beckoning him. He felt was forgetting something. One of the mandated punishers whom old Neil and I dealt are once monitored Megos. I should have told Captain to look into this as their lost control could have the result of the baby. Klein, however, did not have much time to turn back. Upon arriving at the receptionist area, he only saw Leonard chatting with Megos about Lenivas, his expression rigid. Thud. Selina crashed onto the door with her whole body. However, it was a solid oak, due to that her efforts to break down was futile. Megos is here. Her baby is here. I need to leave and help them. Then, she yelled, help. Someone please open the door. Outside, the latches suddenly came undone, thus, trapping her within. Her plea seemed to only reach so far. It is likely that due to stress, the whole squad must be in disarray. I need to escape. Selina calmed herself by regulating her breath. She turned and scoured the room before spotting the window. There were many birds outside. Some are sparrows while others are doves. She unlatched and threw both glass panes open. Tweet. Seed, insect. There. There. Excuse me. Selina called as her silver hair flailed along the wind. The birds turned their heads to her, suddenly putting them into silence. Good. She exclaimed inside. Then out of nowhere, she gestured something comical, help me get the latch behind this door. She raised both hands, open. Selina used hand signs to instruct them. This was because since animals aren't intelligent and relies often from instinct, so she had to simplify for them. All of the birds tilted their heads. Ugh. Selina was already being feeling rigid of the situation. She doesn't have the luxury of teaching these birds. At that moment, a sparrow suddenly flew to the windowsill. It hopped, checking on her. Selina was glad and she pointed, see that door? The window on the hall is open. Could you open the latch for me? If this failed, I failed as a beast tamer. I'll just use the seed to free myself. Tweet. Okay. Then the sparrow flew. Oh goddess really. Selina's eyes lit up but the bird was gone. She waited only for a bit before she heard crisp click sound. The door was opened. Good birdie. I'm sure you've done a very hard work. Once I see you again, I'll give you many treats. Selina watched the bird land on her one finger and petted it before hurriedly descending to the first floor. She saw Klein and Dunn rushing to the stairs. Klein. Captain. Her voice resounded, but it didn't seem to reach them. Suddenly, Selina's spirituality stirred. A hand. A hand is behind you. She dropped to the ground on one knee, turned to behind her and was about to strike when Roseanne caught her eye. Selena. Why were you doing outside? Selena felt relief but still urgent. You need to leave. What? Roseanne's face paled. I meant that we need to vacate. Something tells me our week will be free, so let's go home immediately. Selena didn't want to alert her. But Roseanne, she caught on quite a bit and said, you're still unstable. Don't worry, I can get Leonard to accompany you back. He's currently chatting with a guest. No. Selena wanted to stop her, but that would escalate her concerns. Thus, she pulled out a vial. It was a sleeping agent. I reserved this for when we confront other Beyonders. She bit her lip and took hold of Roseanne's hands. Ms. Roy. Roseanne was shocked, however she suddenly felt groggy. The scent was taking effect. Selena is unaffected due to her resistance of the toxin. Ugh, now who's going to carry her out? At that moment, Selena heard tapping sounds coming from the stairwell. His figure, bearing a top hat and holding a cane. He exudes a scholarly air mixed with frightening expression. Klein. Selena carried Roseanne effortlessly and hid to a corner. Then, she poked her eyes to inspect. Klein entered the accountant office. Few minutes later. He saw him again going out and turning for the partition. Selena didn't want to be seen with Roseanne unconscious, so she pulled back. All right. All right. Maybe Madame Oriana can take care of Roseanne. I have a smelling salt anyway, so she'll be fine. With that in mind. She lowered Roseanne right to where Oriana could see her. She placed the smelling salt near Roseanne's lips and quickly moved away. When Oriana took her things and about to head to the break room, she saw Roseanne waking up. Klein could not find Roseanne, but he needs to return as soon as possible to hand Megos a warm water. Figuring that if Roseanne isn't here, she should be at the partition. If she were, Oriana would find her. But for precautions, he took his George III coin out, recited 7 lines fast and saw it flip to reveal a head. It's positive. She's at the partition. Klein sighed and brought warm water to Megos, bent his back, and placed it on the table in front of her. I have something to settle, I'll be back soon. As he stood up, he took the opportunity to lean in towards Leonard's ear and whispered, keep her here. Leonard clenched his teeth and widened his mouth into a grin. He continued his conversation with Megos and noticed that Megos was getting a little restless, as though she was losing her focus. Selena saw Klein turn from the partition again, intending to head back underground. Her eyes sparkled and she rushed to catch onto him. However, she tripped with her feet. Ah. Selena landed with her arm cushioning her face. What is happening? Klein returned to the captain's office, only to realize that Dunn had already gone underground. There was a telegram on the table. It was the reply from the mandated punishers. Yes. We will be there immediately. Yes. The mandated punisher did lose control because of Megos. Klein couldn't calm himself down as he made his way to the corridor. He didn't know if he was waiting for the captain to retrieve the holy ashes or for reinforcements to arrive. He paced around, couldn't quite grasp what he was missing. He saw that the gas lamps on both sides of the corridor were now dyed a faint blue. Amid the darkness, Dunn followed the stairs into the corridor. In his palm was a square, palm-sized box of ashes. This box looked as though it was made out of pure silver, but it also felt like it was human bones. It was carved with many mysterious patterns. Klein felt colder the closer he was to the box. It was as if the cold was rapidly seeping into his blood. Dunn's face was bathed in an icy blue light. He told Klein, go to Cheney's gate and pick out a sealed artifact with the highest offensive ability. Decide exactly which one with your own judgment. I've already told Sika and the keepers inside. Take note of the hidden threats. Of those, there are 3 grade 2 sealed artifacts, which are. Oh, now that I've taken out the ashes of Saint Selena, Sika and the keepers cannot leave their positions now. At this point, Fry and Royale were both at Kenley's house for the funeral preparations. The Archbishop at Saint Selena Cathedral had gone to the countryside to preach. All right. Klein didn't hesitate, immediately turning towards the basement. At some point, during his trip into the intersection, Klein paused and felt for the flaring sun charm, blood-curdling charm, and Azek's copper whistle in his pocket. He was surprised to find that the sensation of the latter was back. Regardless of whether it was useful or not, Klein took out a pen and paper set that was used for divination and wrote a short message. The person who made my fate disharmonious and stole the skull of your child has appeared. He's in Zangwill who stole 0-08. He has arranged for Megos to enter the Blackthorn Security Company at 36 Zutland Street. It's highly likely that Megos is harboring the son of an evil god. The situation is very urgent. He put away his pen and folded the piece of paper. Klein took out the copper whistle at the intersection and blew, then watched the giant skeleton messenger appear before him. Chapter 232, Grade 2 Artifacts. Right outside. Near Blackthorn Security Company. The small juvenile plant had grown exponentially. It now had brown bark. However, beneath the soil, there was no roots. It is clear that this plant is growing similarly to a bamboo. Its germination all throughout this time is complete. In the corridor within the deep and serene basement, the nearly 4-meter-tall bone messenger disappeared before Klein's eyes after taking the letter. When all that was left of the surroundings were the classic gas lamps embedded in the walls, he put away Isaac's copper whistle and walked towards Cheney's gate. As he was writing the letter, he had already decided on which sealed artifact to pick. Firstly, it would be almost impossible for the Grade 3 sealed artifacts to have any effect on the baby in Migos' stomach. Unless it was an item like the mutated Sun Sacred Emblem which had hidden powers. But, at that very moment, in such a situation, Klein wasn't in the mood to explore or research a secret that might or might not exist. Plus, most sealed artifacts would carry a certain level of danger for the user. So, Klein eliminated the Grade 3 sealed artifacts that would weaken the user without affecting the enemy. Secondly, the Tinjin Nighthawks didn't have any Grade 1 sealed artifacts and only 3 Grade 2 artifacts. That was originally a secret that Klein wasn't allowed to know, but due to the urgency of the situation, Dunn made use of an emergency clause and told him the general situation. Dunsmith couldn't hold any other sealed artifacts at the same time while holding St. Selena's ashes. And behind the Tinjin City's Cheney's gate, there were 3 Grade 2 sealed artifacts, 2-030, 2-078, and 2-105. The name of 2-030 was Inexhaustible Poison. It originated from a Beyonder with an unknown sequence name who suddenly went mad and cut his wrist to commit suicide. He let his blood flow into an ordinary silver cup. But when his blood ran dry, the silver cup wasn't filled, and the liquid in the cup became crystal clear and alluring. It was a temptation that even a Sequence 5 Beyonder had failed to resist. After he drank the liquid, he died of poisoning on the spot. After the person died, the poison seeped out through his pores and pooled together again. Its volume was the same as before he drank it. Not one bit less. Dunn said that the researchers in the Holy Cathedral suspected that the poison could kill a high-sequence Beyonder. However, the question lay within the fact that it was almost impossible for a high-sequence Beyonder to be tempted to drink it. Furthermore, the traits of 2-030 were obvious, so no one would consume it by accident. If one wanted to poison them, they had to first capture them, seize control of them, and then force it down their throat. But then, why go through the trouble? 2-030 would constantly tempt the living things around it to drink it. The user had to be fully focused on resisting its power. Any slight negligence would make one drink the poison as though it was only natural to do so. When Dunn finished his description, Klein decided, almost instantly, to not pick that sealed artifact. The name of 2-078 was Door of Death. Its appearance was like a normal wooden door. Any living thing that passed through it would die instantly. No high-sequence Beyonder had ever participated in the test. It possessed living traits and constantly attempted to escape. It could change its appearance and disguise itself into pre-existing doors. If the user made any mistakes, he would lose control of it. Then, he would need to be careful and not pass through any door near him. He would have to try to wait at the original spot for help or break through a wall to escape. Klein thought of using 2-078, but after re-evaluating the latter two, he felt that the intuition of a legendary creature would be very sharp and would be able to differentiate whichever door was the door of death. In the end, he decided to pick 2-105. The name of the sealed artifact was Blood Vessel Thief. It looked like a thick, stiffened blood vessel. Anyone who touched it, regardless of whether they were protected or not, would have their life stolen. In the beginning, it wouldn't be obvious. But, if one didn't break contact with it, the effects would be visible half an hour later. Dunn said that a Sequence 5 heretic held onto it for 2 hours. He turned from a brawny man in his 30s into a hunched old man who had loose skin, thin white hair, and missing teeth. The most important trait of 2-105 was that the person wearing it would have the chance to steal an ability from a target within a specific range. Even high-sequence Beyonders could be robbed of their abilities, but the probability was smaller. Within a 10-minute time period, the person who was robbed would lose the corresponding ability while the person who wore the item would be able to use the ability skillfully. 10 minutes later, the ability would vanish, and the person who was robbed would need to wait a couple of days to recover. Why do I keep getting the feeling of something missing? Hopefully the reinforcements get here soon. Klein stopped outside the duty room, showing no signs of hesitation anymore. About the negative effects of sealed artifact 2-105, he wasn't worried because he wasn't planning to use the artifact himself. His plan was to give it to Leonard, as he already had the flaring sun charm and Azek's copper whistle who he had no idea if it would still be suppressed. My dear poet, it's time for you to show your true secret. Klein muttered and saw Sikatron standing by the duty room. With her white hair and black eyes, the part-time author remained silent for a few seconds before saying, "Why don't you guard Cheney's gate?" I'm stronger and more experienced than you. Because I. Klein paused. For some reason he felt it should be him who'd confront Insanguil. Hence, he reasoned, it wouldn't be safe here either. There are many sealed artifacts that possess living traits that are itching to take action. If we fail, the people here will definitely not survive. Our goal upstairs is to buy time and wait for reinforcements. It might be safer than being around Cheney's gate. Sika Tron puckered her lips slowly and drew a crimson moon on her chest. May the goddess bless all of you. As Dunn didn't have the time to write the document in time, Klein couldn't enter Cheney's gate directly. All he did was watch Sika Tron push open a tiny crack and enter. After a few minutes, she appeared by the door, and she was holding a thick, blood-tainted, pale blood vessel in her left hand. Klein extended his hand to take it, and he immediately felt a faint current surging in his body. In the reception hall of the Blackthorn Security Company, Leonard had already shaken off his stiff state from earlier, and his expression didn't look abnormal as he talked about the recently discovered house that Lenevis rented before. Is that so? He never told me about it before. Megos replied normally, creasing her eyebrows slightly. Then, she grabbed her blonde hair, pulled out a handful, and casually threw it into the trash can by the side. Leonard was dumbfounded. He gulped with difficulty, and his palms were full of cold sweat once again. Klein walked up the stairs to the second floor with the blood vessel thief in his left hand. He looked at the door that led to the Nighthawk's break room, where Dunn Smith stood silently in his black windbreaker. His eyes were gray and deep, just like when they had first met. Reintroducing myself, Nighthawk, Dunn Smith. The voice of the past sounded in Klein's ears as the scene of Dunn by Kenley's corpse flashed in his head. There was blood all over his mouth. He suddenly fell silent and walked over. He lifted his left hand and said, "Captain, I picked sealed artifact 2 to 105. I plan on letting Leonard use it." Dunn nodded slightly. He didn't ask why but turned and pointed at his office as he spoke. The Holy Cathedral sent a telegram. They said that they'll gather a team of strong Beyonders immediately and asked us to stall for as much time as possible and try to wait. About those coincidences, they didn't give any reply. I think they don't have any conclusions as of yet. Or perhaps, the person who handles the telegrams doesn't know the actual situation and has no way to make guesses. You know, we have to make the best use of time. Telegrams can't be too long. Yes. Klein nodded. He got closer to the partition and looked outside as he said, "How's the situation?" "Nothing strange as of yet." Dunn looked down at the Saint's Ash box in his left hand. Seeing how Leonard and Megos were having a good time chatting, Klein didn't interrupt them. He retreated to the Nighthawk's recreation room and faced Dunn with the corridor in between them. Just then, Dunn suddenly let out a self-deprecating laugh. "I forgot something." "What is it?" Klein replied, puzzled. Dunn looked sideways at him and said, "Daly told me to explain myself to you." Huh. Klein was stunned, as he couldn't quite understand what the captain meant. After 2 seconds, before Dunn could reply, he suddenly understood. Madame Daly didn't reply immediately because she thought it was unnecessary. She had forwarded the matter to the captain and let him explain himself. That means that there isn't anything serious with the captain. At this critical point, Klein felt relieved, deeply relieved. Dunn sighed. "I did want to send you away back then since I was going to do something that involves the secrets of the church and the Nighthawks. But Kenley's death left my mind in chaos. At that moment, all I could think of was a clumsy excuse, thus, giving you the opportunity to witness what I was doing." "What secret is that?" Klein pressed, now being more at ease. He had almost forgotten about the threat of the evil god's son, or the existence of a legendary creature outside. Dunn weighed his words and said, "There might be a law in mysticism. Hey, even though I haven't read many books, I'm still aware of what a law means. This law is called, Law of Beyonder Characteristics Indestructibility. The characteristics of a Beyonder is never destroyed or reduced. It's only passed from one carrier to the next." Klein's eyes widened. In the other room, Selena kept on tumbling. What is happening? Why was there a vase on the floor? She got up, quickly darted her eyes and saw another window. When she peeked outward, there was no birds. There was a strange omen Selena felt as up above are gray clouds accumulating specifically in this region. Then, a glow. Selena's eyes were blinded momentarily by a glow. She casted her gaze down and saw patterns, tattoos, they looked like chains. They intertwined around her body. Then, they disappeared. Her heart sank. Selena was drowned into multiple thoughts. What is that? Why is my body glowing? That wasn't there before, what is causing this? The darkness grew vividly around her. The haunting syllables surround Selena as fear gripped her scalp and hair standing on ends. No. This. What is happening? Maybe I shouldn't have left the health room, maybe I should have stayed. But Klein, Captain, Leonard, they need me. No. Selina curled herself, holding her head as she winced. Then, all of a sudden, she heard a conversation down the hall. This law is called Law of Beyonder Characteristics Indestructibility. The characteristics of a Beyonder is never destroyed or reduced. It's only passed from one carrier to the next. It was Dunn's gentle voice. Chapter 233, Guardian. For example, the sealed artifacts, mysterious objects, or a potion's main ingredients that are left behind by Beyonders who have lost control. Klein's reply echoed next. Correct. This isn't only the case for Beyonders who lose control, it's also the same for normal Beyonders after they die. But what's different about Beyonders who lose control is that a Beyonder who dies normally won't leave behind ingredients or objects. They're equivalent to a potion that corresponds to their sequences, except that they're lacking a certain amount of supplementary ingredients. Beyonder characteristic indestructibility. Beyonder characteristic conservation. Selina was suddenly pulled from her stupor. But why's Captain saying this? Did something happen during their recent mission? Klein has since stopped reporting to me. Dunn looked at the recreation room and explained in a deep voice, a few years ago. Well, I can't exactly remember just exactly how many years it was, but I wasn't the captain of the Nighthawks back then. I unexpectedly realized this problem, and after interacting with Daly, who had just become a Beyonder, I immediately sent a report to the Holy Cathedral. The Holy Cathedral told me to keep it a secret and gave me two choices. That's also the reason why it's me, and not Daly, who's explaining this to you. Whoever exposes this is responsible for it. The first choice was to pretend to know nothing, just like a large number of Nighthawk captains and deacons, and allow the Holy Cathedral to continue dealing with the remains of Beyonders who died through normal means. The second was for them to give me a unique, simple ritual and the corresponding techniques. It would allow me to temporarily consume the items produced by the unique characteristics within a limited period of time. Well, this is only suitable for sequences of the same pathway at my level or lower. This would augment my Beyonder characteristics, and I would also become more powerful. In terms of abilities regarding dreams, my powers now are not too different from a sequence SIXS. That's also the reason why I dared to deal with Madame Sharon. Madame Sharon. Selina recalled something. I chose the second option, but not because I wanted to become more powerful. If I wanted to become more powerful, quickly digesting a potion and receiving an advancement is the best and most direct way. Then why do you still continue? Klein's voice asked in reply. I just said that becoming more powerful isn't the reason why I consume their remains. They were all my partners. We've gone through many things together. We've dealt with monsters in the darkness and insane heretics together. Some of them have saved me, and I've saved quite a number of them. We walked together in the silent night. We fought together in battles that aren't visible to the general public. We faced danger together. We had each other's backs. I really can't bear to part with them. I remember the lad, Hit. He broke into tears the first time we went on a dangerous mission. I remember Adelaide, he was Roseanne's father. He once blocked an evil curse for me with his arm. I remember the lady, Dwayne, and her warm temperament which was like the dawn. She would always silently record the things we encountered. I remember Kenley being someone who knew how to do many things like play the 7-string guitar, sing, tell stories, even though he wasn't tall. He was more like a poet than Leonard. I miss them very much. I hope to continue fighting with them, to continue dealing with the monsters in the darkness, to deal with the crazy heretics, to protect Tingeon City with them. Thus, I chose to consume their remains. Captain. Selina weakly muttered. There was an undeniable tint in Dunn's voice. They're still with me in my dreams. Adelaide loves to read, and he often reads at the solarium. He often tells me to discipline Roseanne and get her to mature faster, to the point that Roseanne complains about me becoming more and more like her father and has become scared of me. Hit is a person who cannot sit still and has to hunt in the forest every day. Dwayne always stands by the window of her bedroom and watches us chat. Kenley, who recently joined, created his own 7-string guitar and sings while strumming it. I really miss them. Selina pressed both her intertwined hands. It was unknown when she stood right to a corner. Unfortunately, old Neil died after losing control. Otherwise, he would have brought along much joy to us. Dunn retracted his gaze. He lowered his head and massaged the bridge of his nose. A few seconds later, he lifted his head and let out a bitter smile. This is a selfish decision. I don't know what the true wishes of Adelaide, Kenley, and the rest were, and, thus, selfishly made a decision for them. I truly am a selfish person. No. No, you're not. Selina was reminded of Leonard's words. He became responsible of you. On the sofa in the receptionist area, Leonard watched Megos pull out clumps of her hair as his expression became more and more rigid. Megos seemed increasingly restless as she constantly picked up the glass for a mouthful of water. She looked at Leonard with a contorted expression. I don't know why, but I suddenly feel a little unwell. Leonard Mitchell was about to reply when he suddenly saw Megos reach for her face. She clawed out a piece of flesh, a long piece of flesh stained with blood. My face is a little itchy. Megos smiled, a little embarrassed. The edge of her lips spread to where her cheekbones were, revealing a row of white teeth and bright red gums. Fuck. Leonard cursed out silently. He felt that the situation was worsening way too quickly. His lips quivering, Leonard turned to listen as his expression immediately turned steely green. He forced a smile and apologized to Megos, who was clawing out pieces of her flesh. I need to use the bathroom. Al, right. Megos' tone became ethereal. She rubbed her belly and said, my child is a little restless. Selena suddenly lowered her hands. Her spiritual intuition is stirring like a tidal tempest. As the ability of a beast tamer was to exert their ether body far so that it allows them to acutely comprehend emotions of the plants and read animals. It also allowed her to sense the seed inside Leonard's vial. This is one of the strange things she discovered when talking with him in the health room. Though this wasn't implied due to her inactive focus. Now. The seed's spiritual intuition is acting like a remote bot. Sending it to her. Megos' devil child is acting. Selena felt the seed's dark blemishes growing. She was gripping the hems of her dress intensely. Then, she heard Leonard in the partition. Captain, I'm afraid that it's too late. We have to deal with Megos and her baby immediately. Otherwise, the whole of Tingen will suffer terrible losses. This isn't something that can be avoided just by evacuating the citizens around us. I know that you've already sent such a telegram. Are you sure that the situation has worsened to such an extent? Yes. In no more than 3 minutes, Megos will undergo a mutation, and her child will descend upon us. Leonard exchanged some words with Klein. Their silhouette was made with the latter handing what looked like an intermingled linings to him. I'll head out with St. Selena's ashes first. Come out after 10 seconds, remember, come out only after you finish counting to 10. Then, regardless of my condition, direct your strongest attacks at Megos and her baby without wasting any time. Selena's heart skipped for the worst. No. Captain. 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 2 voices erupted, one was silent. Don't worry about me. I'm not alone. Adelaide, Dwayne, Hit, and Kenley are all fighting alongside me, no matter what kind of danger I face. Dunn's voice spoke with gentleness. Then, it paused for a moment before adding. There's no need to be too nervous as well. Regarding Tingen City. Selena could feel the captain is smiling. Before hearing his steps gradually disappear. We are guardians, but also a bunch of miserable wretches that are constantly fighting against threats and madness. Chapter 234, Curtain. Beep. 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 The telegram set up in the captain's office suddenly came to life, seemingly having received a new telegram. Having to hear this. Selena woke up from her stupor, eyes forming droplets that fell from her cheek to the floor. Now. She ran. She kept on tumbling but remained on standing back again. It finally came to her that Ince is trying to isolate her from everyone. Because how could Klein forget her? How could Klein be so distracted that he loses focus on others? On the partition, Klein's spiritual intuition was triggered. He turned, Leonard noticed him, confused but mirrored where he was looking nonetheless. Selena. Selena is running toward them. Klein's ears buzzed, his heart tearing from multiple scenes undulated to his senses. The room pooled with Selena's blood, he can't get rid of it. Then, Selena collapsed again, her feet got hit with the leg of a vase table. What are you doing here? Klein's emotions erupted. How could he have forgotten to evacuate her? Leave. Now. Selena got up, her disheveled silver hair all over her face. She got closer, finally smoothly, and when she was at arm's length, Leonard saw her hand shot for Klein's face. Smack. The silver strands of her hair turned to the side to reveal a messy sapphire eyes and flustered face. She was mad, angry, and in disdain. No. You, stubborn. King's son. Don't you dare deprive me a chance to help you. To help Captain and everyone. The movements of the clock was ticking, echoing in the hall. 8. 7. 6. Klein clenched his fists. You'll die. Selena's eyes widened in shock. I can't. I won't let that happen. So leave. What about you? What if you die instead? Selfish, selfish. Selena raised her fist and she began hitting Klein, her head was down as tears kept falling from her eyes. Did you not think of me at all? What will become of me when you're gone? You said, will return home safe. There's no we when you're gone. Klein finally felt the dam loose once and for all. I saw it. I saw you die. I saw in a divination of your blood forming a puddle. A hand was scooping your blood. Don't be reckless. Like what you did about Insanguil. So stay out and evacuate. Huh. Selina was petrified. She stepped back. She fell silent and Leonard couldn't bear seeing this unfolds. He turned his head away. Hick. That was the 4th time you broke my conditions for you. Then, she raised her voice. It will be the 5th time if you step out of this partition. Klein took a while to answer. When he finally did, he turned away, facing the partition. The second hand of the clock glinted in his vision. Then so be it. Don't try to follow us or peek from here. At that moment, a loud shriek rang from the reception hall. You want to kill my child? You want to kill my child? Boom. The shrill and terrifying voice reverberated. Selina felt like she was being struck in the head with a sledgehammer. Her vision went red, and there seemed to be liquid flowing from the tip of her nose. She subconsciously looked sideways, and saw the corner of Klein and Leonard Mitchell's eyes. The tip of their nose and the corners of their lips were covered in fresh blood. Their face was extremely pale, and their body are wavering as though they were about to fall. 5. 4. 3. Struck by the terrifyingly sharp voice, Dunsmith's deep gray eyes were filled with red veins. Every single strand was crystal clear. The blood vessels in his face protruded out as well, every one of them like a poisonous snake. There was also a gurgle as red liquid flowed out of his ears as well. Despite that, he did feel dizzy. Other than his right hand pausing, his strong willpower drove him to press down on St. Selina's urn and open the lid. Inside the box, there was deep darkness. In the darkness, there was fine resplendent sand. The scene was magically beautiful, just like a starry night being stored in a box. The surroundings suddenly became dark, and the darkness engulfed the entire reception hall. In the air, there were countless black, cold, and smooth threads were floating. They surged towards Megos and entangled her almost instantly. It wasn't like a spider web, but more like the tentacles of some unknown creature. Megos had already torn out her right eyeball. It hung by a thin cord of flesh underneath her eye socket. She stared at Dunsmith with hatred as she roared, "You must die." Bang. Dun was cast away by a formless force and slammed heavily into the wall opposite. The wall cracked, and bricks were thrown up. He spat a mouthful of fresh blood onto the ground, but both his hands were still tightly holding onto St. Selina's urn. He held onto it for dear life and kept it from falling to the ground. Those countless black, cold, and smooth threads tightened and bound Megos firmly to the spot. No matter how much blight-tainted flames rose up suddenly, or how her skin began to secrete a liquid that smelt like brimstone, neither of those defenses dealt any damage to the threads holding onto her. 2. 1. Selina's body glowed. As they were about to burst into battle, Klein halted and was shocked when he saw heinous dark glow next to him. Leonard was looking at the clock, finally hitting the second moment. Klein. Selina's voice went frail. The patterns and mark resembled chains that wrapped around Selina's body like a tattoo. For some reason, it restrained her even more, plummeting her to the ground. She collapsed. What the hell is happening? What the F***ck is that? Klein's heartstrings were tearing as he saw Selina in a painful state. He was also deeply perplexed by the anomaly of her body. Are they supposed to be chains? What's shackling her at this moment? Klein moved. He was about to immediately come to Selina's side when he suddenly heard Leonard's voice. Klein. We need to back up, Captain. Hence, he paused. His gaze froze and reflects the writhing Selina, who needed him at this moment. Selina held her arms. Why do I feel so drained all of a sudden? No, these patterns will fade. Then, she lifted her head. She saw Klein, who couldn't even come to check on her. Klein. Klein fell silent. Casted by the lamplight. A silhouette of a man slowly collected himself again. He turned and left alongside his ally. Klein's hair got in the way of his side profile. He left Selina. Klein and Leonard dashed out through the partition simultaneously. One of them was holding onto a punched seed scribbled with patterns, and the other had already aimed his 5 fingers with the blood vessel thief wound around his left wrist at Megos. Megos, who no longer looked human, struggled as flesh protruded from both sides of her shoulders. They were a mixture of blood vessels and green veins, round like a child's head. Above the 2 heads, cracks rapidly spread and seemingly turned into a pair of eyes. Megos suddenly noticed danger approaching, and she opened her mouth. The corner of her lips cracked all the way up to her ears. She was going to deal the blaspheme curse to every enemy that attempted to harm her child. At that moment, Leonard clenched his left hand into a fist as his wrist made a half-turn. His pale face turned livid, and the vessels protruded like bunch of tiny poisonous worms. Migos' blaspheme curse was left stuck in her throat as it came to a sudden halt. She seemed to have lost the ability to speak and the ability to evoke curses. Klein seized the opportunity and muttered an ancient Hermes word in a deep voice. Release. Let the nightmares engulf you. He suddenly felt the thumb-sized seed that was covered in mysterious patterns became deathly cold as he saw it amidst a series of overlapping doors like light on his palm. It was as though he was seeing a projection of something terrifying behind each doors. Right on the heels of that, Klein injected more than half his spirituality into it and locked his intent onto the restrained Migos. He threw it. The reception hall instantly turned gloomy, the steeples and the doors seemed to be urging for them to open, gravitating toward the suspended seed. The black fine threads that entangled Migos, they bulged as though they were attracted by some force. Migos' freedom got even more harder to reach. The seed, emitting a dark glow of overlapping doors, suddenly cracked. It oozed a terrifying blob of darkness, echoing a sinister omen and horror. Oh. Whoosh. Splash. Sizzle. Sizzle. Suddenly, glow resembling an overlapping doors instantly jumped in size outward. Its light reached every corners of the reception hall. The blob found its target. It was Migos. Migos' body was emitting illusory layered doors. At that moment, Migos' eyes forcibly closed themselves. The series of glow bind her into a state of slumber. Dunn, Leonard and Klein looked bewildered by the display of power. It suppressed the rampaging Migos so quickly. Now. Klein fished out a warm thin gold slice, the flaring sun charm. He didn't want to give another second for the monster to erupt awake. If possible, he wanted to end this quickly. But reflected on his Migos' body, even the child inside calmed down. Then suddenly, a part of her body was torn. Rip. Then, her hand was consumed by darkness. Her neck had a rugged line that looked like it was bitten. Her legs swollen until it burst with blood. Then, her bloated stomach was opened by a gnawed hole, revealing a putrid darkness. Don't look. Klein's clown intuition was triggered. He looked away instantly and saw even Leonard and Dunn did the same. Migos' body was being torn, bombarded and ripped open by a series of darkness and mutations. It even felt like life was against her. When the dark clouds of nightmare formed around her body, Klein felt the tension finally decreasing. He kept the flaring sun charm in his hand to prepare for any movements. Selena's weakening body was sudden. Klein and Leonard already disappeared to the corner of the partition, finally joining the fight. However, something is wrong. She could feel it. The glowing tattoos that resembled chains around her body is an indication. Selena doesn't know why it is happening. Regardless, she forced herself to stood up. Thankfully, the chains faded again, allowing her to reclaim her strength. Whoosh! A glow of overlapping doors went through Selena's body. She felt and saw it vanish. Klein used the blood-curdling charm. If it's the flaring sun charm, it would have been a bright descent of light. However, this one reflects the series of doors she saw embedded onto the seed. At that moment again, Selena was brought down by the glowing of her body. Ah. This can't keep happening. I need a way to resist. She took her spare of the blood-curdling charm. Selena could still feel a feint of its power. This would likely diminish its sealing powers, but she clutched it tightly, then commanded it with her intimidation to submit its vitality. I need it. The gaseous cloud of darkness churned until a glint sparked. Suddenly, Klein felt goosebumps all over. His clown instincts told him that there was extreme danger approaching. Without thinking, he rolled to the left abruptly. Just then, a long arm with an extremely sharp white bone blade cleaved the spot, seemingly out of nowhere. The monstrosity had an abnormal beauty, and it floated in midair. It was unbelievably fast and almost impossible to dodge its attacks. Whoosh! Klein's clothing on the right side of his chest was ripped apart, his skin ruptured, and his flesh, along with his bones, was split into two. The wound was so deep that he could almost see one of his lungs. If it wasn't because he sensed danger approaching beforehand and dodged in time, that slash would have sliced him in half. But, even so, Klein slowed down. Extreme pain filled his head and scattered his consciousness. At the end of the white bone blade, a figure rapidly flew out. If it wasn't for the bump on its stomach, perhaps no one could identify it as Migos. Her hair and dress had been burned entirely. The skin on her face and body was charred black and was peeling off, flake after flake. Her nose had melted, leaving only two small black holes behind. Her eyeballs were nowhere to be seen, and there were faint white flames dancing in the empty sockets. The two heads that had popped up from both sides of Migos' shoulders had been burned away. Her left arm had become the white bone blade that she was holding. It looked demonic, yet holy. Creak. As the ground shook, Migos ignored Dunn and Leonard, as well as the black, cold, and smooth fine threads that were hurtling towards her again. She phased over to Klein, who had come to a stop after rolling away. She aimed the white bone blade at Klein's neck and was about to slash down. Suddenly, she heard a voice that contained a rich blasphemous tone. "Submit." Leonard lifted his left hand and aimed his palm at Megos. The sealed artifact 2-105 wrapped around his wrist had turned from a thick pale, blood-tainted blood vessel into a crimson intestine that had expanded to the point that it looked ready to explode. With the aid of the blood vessel thief, Leonard had successfully stolen Megos' blaspheme curse and was attempting to use her power to seize control of her. Only an ability at her level was effective. Under the influence of the blaspheme curse, Megos bent her waist, and her knees were constantly trembling. Her motions came to a halt as the surrounding black threads surrounded her as though they had found a delicious prey. Klein also took the opportunity to roll in the opposite direction, leaving a trail of fresh crimson blood behind him. However, he got some reprieve from his extreme pain and injected spirituality into the thin gold slip in his hand. He took the opportunity when Megos was stationary to finish her off, once and for all. If she were to hold out until the baby was born, the outcome would be beyond their imagination. Boom. Megos had exploded on its own. Her charred skin and flesh flew in all directions. But her headless body seized the opportunity to shake off the effect of the blaspheme curse. Boom. Megos' charred body transformed into a projectile that shot towards Leonard. Since the blaspheme curse had been forcefully disrupted, Leonard was temporarily frozen on the spot. At that moment, Dunsmith was still holding onto St. Selena's urn tightly. His face was abnormally pale, and the black, cold threads that were created was still short of surrounding Megos. Creak. Megos slammed into Leonard, throwing him to the wall. The wall collapsed from the impact. Leonard's bones cracked, and there was blood spewing out from his mouth incessantly. Without even having the urge to struggle, he fainted instantly. Megos raised her white bone blade, but the countless black threads that emanated from St. Selena's urn enveloped her again and was about to bind her to the ground. Without the luxury of time to mind his injuries, Klein opened his mouth. Just as he was going to recite the ancient Hermes incantation, something suddenly sounded in the deep, dark, yet quiet room. Wah. It was the cry of a baby. At the same time, Selena's voice echoed. Release. Dunn and Klein saw a woman with a cascading white silver hair and body glowing with chain-like tattoos. A seed flew and it forced both Megos and the spawn to asleep after a glow of overlapping doors. Selena. Klein's pupils trembled. In the grave moment, the whole place shook. Rumbled. The reception hall experienced a tear on the ground, creating a ravine. Then, a tree surged upward from a wall. It had chaotic scale-like bark covered in screaming faces and carnage leaves tipped with darkness. Chapter 235, Two Entities. Inside the reception hall, a giant tree towered and shadowed the entire Blackthorn Security Company, obscuring the sky with immense foliage. But underneath the tree, there was only rubble. No battle was ongoing, no personnel of the Nighthawk squad was fighting. Only the tree, the ruins, and one single portrait was present, a portrait with Megos' figure looming over against four people in a meadow, tinged with dark sky. Inside of an unknown space. Klein saw a minute of wind, he felt a grass beneath his palm and a meadow far beyond what he could see. He suddenly thought he's in the dream world. That the White Maiden had descended to aid and protect her vessel. However, when he turned, there's only one giant towering and sinister tree. The sky suddenly turned dark and red, the sky was bleeding and titan chains erupted very far. Megos is still there, however, her body seemingly in an inactive state, being shredded by mutations while it held a holy bone sword. Klein gritted his teeth. He seized the opening when the spawn in asleep and muttered an ancient Hermes word in a deep voice. Light. I want light, and there will be light. The thin gold slice on his hand grew warm, as if it's boiling. It suddenly emits a blinding light, as though it had become a miniature sun. Klein didn't think. He uncapped the wellspring he had from Selena and drank it. A rush of vigor moved down his throat, relieving him of fatigue and giving him an amount of energy. He quickly injected another more of his spirituality into the gold slip and threw the flaring sun charm towards the sleeping Megos. The sky above that had dark clouds and red replacing its blue color instantly turned transparent as the illusory sun grew brighter. The headless Megos twitched. The sinister clouds around her paled to golden color. Selena, Klein, Dunn, and the recently recovered Leonard saw what seemed to be terrifying storms and white breath emanating from her. Leonard is awake. He was thrown by Megos, it led to a collapsed wall, bones crack, he lose blood and he fainted. Yet he's awake. Able to participate in the fight. He looked up, he saw the clouds bent around a perfect circle that seemed to pierce the heavens of crimson to reveal a bright blue sky. The bright blue sky and glaring sunlight shine through simultaneously. The thin gold slice combined with the sunlight above Megos' body immediately expanded in size. It went from a spherical light to a sphere with countless flames spiraling around it. Rumble. The sun had descended. The beam of light struck the painted world. The tree shook violently, and its dark-tipped leaves decayed rapidly. However, the power of the spherical light concentrated its might at its core, without dissipating much. It enveloped Megos, and the light was so glaring that Selina, Klein, Dunn, and Leonard couldn't open their eyes. Klein held back and looked through with squinted eyes. He saw that the light had dispersed, but the flames were still soaring. Among them, there were many black ashes dancing in the air. He finally saw a dark circle where Megos stood. It left a dent on the ground and a bloody placenta on the grassy floor. The sky above them also opened up. But the redness was attempting to patch it. Is it done? Klein was at the rope of his strength. However, they're still in some unknown space, accompanied by a horrifying tree with screaming barks. The screaming barks around its trunk opened their eyes. They used their tongue to draw something in the air. Blood seeped to the tip and it remained suspended. The bloody placenta on the ground glowed again. The flesh was abundant and it reformed to a headless Megos holding a white bone sword, revealing an infant inside her torn abdomen. She was reformed. Resurrected. Dunn's heart sank, but he didn't have the luxury to question. Hence, he continued to use the urn against this newly formed Megos. Damn it. How is this possible? Klein screamed at the unfairness inside. But he felt something is strange, now something is different. Klein saw the infant, but his intuition was not chaotic. He's allowed to look at the baby. Whoosh. Selina looked onto her body, the tattoo chains stayed permanent. Thankfully, the world is both familiar and foreign, she seemed to able to draw strength but at the same time couldn't. Is this the dream world? No. It isn't. If it were, I could easily banish everyone and confront Megos and this strange tree alone. Selina gripped the fabric of her dress around her chest. This is a manufactured mimicry of the dream world. Selina felt she could manipulate the fabricated environment just to an extent. Thus, she made roots protrude out of the ground. Zip. It was so fast, it almost broke in a sonic. The rejuvenated Megos was stabbed again, extending to the infant, with a thick overgrown root. At that moment, Selina felt something was off the second she saw the infant. It suddenly wasn't harmful. At least that's what she thought a split second ago. Look away. You'll die. Selina felt an irrational need to bend, move or turn. At the same time, she felt like the tree was nourishing Megos. Everyone else, Klein, Dunn and Leonard heeded their spiritual intuition. Wah. The baby in Megos' stomach cried. It squirmed, wanting to come into this world in a bid to help its mother escape from her predicament. The black, cold, and smooth threads appeared to suffer a shock as they seemed to be suppressed by an invisible power which led to their retreat backward. Wah. Dunn, Klein, Selina, and Leonard became dizzy at the same time. They felt their throats contract involuntarily as their contracting air passages instantly stifled them. Crimson liquid flowed from their nostrils, their eyes, and their ears. All of their capillaries seemed to have ruptured. If it wasn't for the fact that Selina had undergone the torture of hearing the mutterings and ravings every time she visits the dream world, Klein headed to the world above the grey fog, as well as Dunn holding onto the ashes of Saint Selina, they would have fainted. As for Leonard, the seed in his vial stored in his pocket was glowing. Megos' headless body turned over and looked at Klein, who saw her charred skin and flesh peeling to the ground, and the holy, yet evil white bone blade. Having escaped its influence thanks to his rich experience, Klein immediately felt his scalp tingle and forgot about the pain in his right chest. He seemed to witness his enemy charge towards him maniacally, not giving him any time to pull out another flaring sun charm. Just as he was about to dodge the attack, Klein saw Megos suddenly pause. He saw Dunn Smith's black windbreaker fluttering, and the captain diagonally across him had buried his head. There were multiple thick twitching objects on his back as if they were venomous snakes or tentacles, or monsters. Dunn was using his abilities as a nightmare to forcefully impede Megos' movements. And during that, another series of thick roots erupted from the soil again. It coiled around, adding restraint to the monster. Klein was perplexed. It seemed as though the environment was also aiding them. But during that moment, he also noticed Selina, her red hair was growing visibly again. Mrs. White's influence. This isn't Mrs. White's divine kingdom. Selina is able to control the roots because this is a copy of it. He turned for the giant tree. The tree is fabricating this world. Megos already died, but she got reformed thanks to environment. Klein finally felt he understood the situation. They should retract their target and instead deployed everything in their arsenal to destroy the tree. Bam. 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 With a mere struggle from Megos, the thick tentacle-like objects that protruded from Dunn's back exploded at the same time and the thick roots cracked. A large amount of blood splattered out, covering a large area of the grassy field like rain. Dunn wasn't disappointed at the result, for the blood had been absorbed by the black threads created by Saint Selena's ashes. They had been absorbed. The countless cold, smooth, tentacle-like threads entered a frenzy. They swarmed forward and bound Megos tightly, wrapping themselves around her bulging, squirming stomach. An opportunity. Klein didn't second-guess again. He pulled out the last thin gold slip and prepared to shout the ancient Hermes word for light. Wah. 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 The cries of a baby could be heard once again, more frequent, and more incessant this time around. The countless black threads suddenly came to a pause, retreating and trembling again as if they had all been struck by lightning. At the same time, the face barks on the tree screamed. Oh. Selena's vision blurred, she's collapsing. Klein tried to fight with all his might but he lost grip of the flaring sun charm nonetheless. Meanwhile, Dunn, his expression changed when he realized that Megos was about to free herself and his two members are in trouble. Even though he's deeply perplexed by the symbols around Selena, he didn't urge her to withdraw. Without hesitation, he retracted his right palm, formed a claw, and was about to stab it into his own chest, his left chest. Captain. Leonard suddenly called, putting a stop to whatever Dunn was doing. Seeing everyone but himself and Dunn about to pass out and weakened, Leonard saw claws of darkness appeared onto his captain's fingers. It seems he's about to stab himself. Leonard gritted his teeth, felt for the vial in his pocket and saw the seed glowing inside of it, protecting him. Thanks to Dunn, he found a place. Thanks to the Nighthawks, he found growth. Everything he'd been done, however, came from the thought that he's special. That with his uniqueness, he could simply laxed. But it also isolated him a bit. He couldn't simply project his thoughts openly. He couldn't reconnect with anyone deeply. But then, Selena came. Klein came. He wasn't that special. They all are. They're trios. Klein sitting through their bickering. Selena reminding him of everyone's presence, the seed to remain by his side as a backup, the chance to prove he could belong. He wasn't too afraid to challenge the unknown. Now. Suddenly, Leonard loosened his hold of the vial, he smiled, completely certain and crazy. He leaned in and as if talking to himself, he muttered. Old man, I'm willing to compromise. On Leonard's hand was a frail-looking Tequa seed he took out of the vial. It was glowing brightly, as if signaling that it's near its mother. When Dunn turned in shock to see that Leonard was okay, he saw the seed on his palm grew transparent tendrils. They have ringed interior, they're insects. No, they're worms. Illusory worms. The seed got turned into a ball of writhing worms that suddenly haloed a corporeal clock. I won't let anyone die. Leonard muttered to himself. Then suddenly, the sealed artifact 2-105 wrapped around his wrist turned into a crimson intestine again. That looked like it was about to burst. But something is different. On one of the veins, it obviously shaped like a worm. Submit. With the aid of the blood vessel thief, Leonard had reused Megos' blaspheme curse once more and was attempting to use her power to seize control of her. The headless Megos winced in pain and trembled in the curse. Leonard spat out a breath. Klein. Get up. Take that golden charm again and finish her. Klein's deteriorating senses suddenly vanished. As if the hammering experience was stolen. He heard what called him and quickly picked up the flaring sun charm on a patch of grass. Megos is dead. He retorted before anyone could make another mistake. Dunn and Leonard fell into a daze and echoed the same shock. Selena also recovered again and heard Klein say, the tree is just going to keep on reanimating, reforming Megos. Aim for the tree. Chapter 236, Smile. The four Nighthawks didn't bother with the twisting Megos. Suddenly, everyone's attention was at the tree filled with screaming-faced bark. Selena willed an area below the tree to sprout. Huge tentacle-like roots surged from the ground, creating an environment where it will allow maneuvering. Using this chance, Klein held the flaring sun charm close and followed Leonard behind after he induced Megos with another blaspheme curse. They're sprinting, they leaped onto a suspended thick root to another, using the others as platforms to reach the tree's top. Dunn, seeing this, finally retracts the claws on his hand. He grinned faintly and clutched the urn on his hand, never letting it fall as he sprint toward the tree. Wah! Megos broke from the influence of the curse again. However, Leonard just kept on placing it even from a mile away. To add on to the monster's restraint, Selena used the ground, elevated a chunk of it from the ground and dropped it right above Megos, burying her into the soil. Megos won't be held for long. I need everyone to the top quickly. Selena poured all her attention to giving everyone else a platform to jump on and climb the tree. The pattern all across her body, the chains, remained glowing with eeriness. Huff, huff, huff. Klein used one thick root to another to elevate himself to the top. He witnessed some were being used to pierce the tree's bark but it had no effect, as if a protection was present. This led him to think that in order to put an end to whatever is happening, he had to use the flaring sun charm right above the tree. At that moment, the faced barks opened their mouths, in pain and in horror they wailed. Ah! Klein's nostrils felt warm, his head became light. He saw his vision getting tilted and his body uncontrollable. But when he noticed it, his clown powers suddenly became usable again and his awareness returned. Clenching his fist, the blood vessel thief on Leonard's hand protruded like a bunch of poisonous worms again. He stole the tree's wailing ability, its effect. At that moment, the tree's bark shoot out one after another. The bark faces were attached with a long inward wood that extends as if it's their neck. Their mouths opened and instead of voices, they made multiple milky teeth that barred the insides of their throat. They're going to devour Klein, Dunn, and Leonard. Suddenly, it heard a voice, a rich with powerful blasphemous tone. Submit. Leonard lifted his left hand and aimed his palm at the living faces. Blood vessel thief instantly turned into a crimson intestine due to its welling. He saw one of the faces approach. It was familiar. She had a very pale face, smoldered in sickly malnourishment as her eyes seemed to shed a tear. Thyan's mother. Moria. I'm sorry. Leonard muttered in a heavy tone. Influenced by the blaspheme curse, the sinister head retracted as they trembled constantly from an unknown power. Leonard lifted his head, fought the pain of sealed artifact 2-105 and saw that the tree's crown is near. They need to escort Klein to the top. Soon, they reached another series of long neck bark faces. This time, Leonard intends to use the wailing ability of the tree itself. The blood vessel thief welled and he exhaled faintly before opening his mouth. Ah! Klein and Dunn wasn't affected. Luckily this ability can deduce enemy from foe, which made Leonard glad of its effectiveness. They got through another level again. Behind Dunn, sinister dark tentacles that looked like hairs lounged at every bark faces that threatens them, restraining them and forcing them asleep. Only about one more level until they reach the top. Wah! 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 Suddenly, they heard a blood-curdling sound of the infant. Klein wanted to stop. He subconsciously slowed down from ascending. Klein. Snap out. Reach the crown so we can get out. Leonard's voice shouted. Dunn's words followed as he continued to pave the way where the bark faces retreats. Don't worry. He'll oversee Selena. Leonard turned. He saw an area in the meadow explode into bits of dirt and the clouds of dust settles onto the headless Megos with her bloated stomach glowing. He jumped down as quickly as he can and while midair he declared with fallness that seemed to reach the gods. Fall. Megos felt an intense force collapsing and descending onto her. The infant came to a steady halt before thick roots began to envelop and coil her again. Klein relaxed and he continued going up. Soon, they reached the top. The bountiful locks of dark-tipped leaves surrounded everything and overshadowed the meadow. Dunn used one more of the Saint Selena Ash's ability to allow him entrance through the foliage. When he felt sunlight over his head, Klein held the thin golden strip on his hands as he muttered in ancient Hermes. Light. His hand where the flaring sun charm was emitted a halo that is similar to a miniature sun. The dark clouds looming over the red sky suddenly bent on their own to invite the true Sunday. Klein injected the last streak of his remaining spirituality, enough so that he can stay alive. He jumped. He left the flaring sun charm to stay at the tree's peak. When he saw Klein embrace the fall, Dunn, in his flailing dark windbreaker, joined him. He propelled himself, took hold of Klein's body with one arm and the urn by the other. The bright blue sky and brilliant sunlight met again. The thin gold slice combined with the sunlight above enlarged into the extreme. It went from a spherical light to a sphere with countless flames spiraling around it. Then, as if it's a corporeal pillar, the sun descended. It was redirected to the tree by the flaring sun charm. Dunn, Klein, Leonard and Selena all looked at the beam of light and halos of flames welcoming the arrival of the divine. As everyone was distracted, the monster Megos awakened. She broke out of the shackles of the fall through the blaspheme curse and went straight to Selena. Just then, Klein felt an extreme danger. He lifted his head and his heart dropped. No. Selena, he screamed to the top of his lungs. Klein was held by Dunn, who was falling, was what reflected in Selena's eyes until suddenly it turned bloody red. Her breathing suddenly stopped. A long arm with an extremely sharp white bone blade cleaved the fabric of the air behind her body. Megos didn't stop there. She raised her bone sword and sliced horizontally. It went vertical, but it only cut through her Selena's left arm when she mustered to turn around. At that moment, the painting broke. For some inexplicable reason, none of the mandated punishers or machinery hive mind had yet to arrive. It seemed as though time dilutes in the painted world. When Klein woke up, he felt an extreme presence. He forcibly opened his eyes and saw Dunn already standing. Leonard was standing, so Selena must be standing too. That was until he noticed an object flew far away from the completely ruined Blackthorn Security Company. No. No. Wishing that it only happened in a dream, in that separate world. Klein forced himself to stand up. Then there he saw it. The headless Megos was in an inactive state, likely due to the outcome of the separate world. However, in front of her, she had her hand raised wielding a holy white bone sword. Attached to the sword's end, Selena's body was suspended in the air, without a left arm. Everything that keeps you safe should be celebrated. Even if I put on hundreds of drenched clothes, I'd still feel cold. How's it like in China? Hee thank you, for this wonderful gift. Such a penny-wiser King Sunday, sigh. King Sunday, I feel that it suits you already. You tend to forget things when you're excited. Sigh. I was just gone for a day and you're already like this. Just promise me you'll find me too. Klein's mind buzzed with the thoughts of her voice. He was shaking, he was trembling. No. He suddenly pulled out his revolver. Bang. 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 But it had woken up the petrified Megos. Her headless body shook Selena off of its bone sword. Wah. Wah. Selena. Klein's mouth was bleeding from his grits. He sprinted toward Megos. Fuck you. Little piece of shit. Die. God damn it. Die already. Dunn's eyes constricted, he lost yet another friend. Whilst Leonard was starting to grow illusory worms around his face. Klein's losing it. He first muttered before shouting to Leonard. Cover him. Leonard didn't say anything. He dashed, as fast and powerful as he could, using his abilities to try and catch Klein while also hoping he'd reach Selena's body. The bulging veins around his hand welled in size and shape, looking a lot more like intestines, he declared at Megos charging toward Klein. Collapse. Dunn's face changed. He can't bear to what he was seeing anymore, but he couldn't lose another friend, a member. Without stopping him now, without a sliver of hesitation, he retracted his right palm, formed yet another pristine claw. Finally, he stabbed it into his own chest, his left chest. He quickly pulled out his right hand, his fingers holding a bloody heart tightly. It was a still-beating heart that brought with it the sereneness of the night and a dream. Ah. As Klein kept on pulling his gun. Dunn Smith stuffed the heart into the urn containing Saint Selena's ashes. His vision quickly blurred. Whoosh. 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 Crying that sounded like a late-night nightmare resounded. The countless cold and serene threads once again resumed their efforts as they wrapped themselves tightly around Megos. This time, they didn't loosen their bindings despite the cries coming from the baby in Megos' stomach. In fact, they even sealed the terrifying sounds within the body. Leonard was shocked upon seeing this. He turned and his heart sank into helplessness. There was a bloody hole in Dunn Smith's chest. Weaken it. Leonard heard the captain's voice from afar. He couldn't simply rebel at the captain's orders. However, just then, he felt he couldn't continue on for much longer. He saw the giant tree withering from a corner and confirmed that it indeed wasn't a dream. He doesn't have much time left. If he continued further, it would risk himself, his fate and identity getting stolen. Hence, with one last use of the calibrated, corrupted blood vessel thief. He opened his mouth, the sealed artifact bulged in heinous color and in size again. Weaken. The blaspheme curse was unexpectedly much stronger this time. It halted the infant altogether as if it truly deprived of it of the strength it draws. Bang. Klein shot another demon-hunting bullet, now it went straight to Megos' stomach, toward the infant. Megos suddenly stopped. She stood there with a headless body. The dark, countless, and cold serene threads was clutching much harder, as if its victim was no longer living. Then, out of nowhere, due to the infant's lack of divinity entirely from its death inside the painted world, it bulged. It grew rounder and rounder until... bam. It exploded. Megos' body was all over the place. Blood splattered to everyone, Klein, Leonard, Dunn and Selena. However, Klein didn't stop. He threw his revolver away and immediately lowered himself to Selena's body. Selena. We finally killed the tree, we killed Megos. His lips were quivering, his voice sounding deeply hoarse. So wake up. Wake up. After moments of painful shakes. Like a horror scene, Selena's hand moved. Klein's eyes shrink, he was elated. Okay, keep your eyes awake. Selena, don't close them. I can still do ritualistic magic and just. But Selena's hand touched Klein's face. He froze. It's fine. Selena smiled. It's not fine. Klein took hold of her hand. I can't let you die. I'll be alone. I won't taste your cooking again. I can't fix my tie properly yet. I need you. I need you than anything else. Drip. Klein stooped his head down. Hairs covering his face. He clenched his teeth, suddenly blood prickled from the tension. If only. If only I was powerful enough. If only I could have seen Sanguil with you. If only I had listened to you. Hick. Selina caressed Klein's face. Oh, King's son, don't blame yourself. Clown's smile. So smile. Suddenly a glint appeared on her fading eyes as she chuckled. Even at death, she wanted nothing more than for Klein's physical and emotional well-being. Hee hee, I just realized a perfect acting principle for you. Smile for me, will you? I can't recognize you. It was a frugal attempt. It failed to stop Klein's heart from breaking down as droplets stained the floor underneath him. Then, Selina's smile softened. You tried. Klein, I'm so happy you tried your best for me. She fought with the remaining vigor she had using beast tamer powers. So. I'll get mad if you say otherwise. It'll be unfair to you if you said you didn't. They tried, Klein noticed and tried. That was enough. No no no. Why you'll live. Klein felt a peck on his cheek. He saw Selina pull away slowly. Don't worry. I'll accompany you. At that moment. Everyone heard Dunn's voice and saw the heart in the box of St. Selina's ashes still beating slowly. Leonard and everyone looked toward him. Selina felt relaxed even more. Captain. Dunn Smith smiled. His pale face had a warm and relaxed expression, and his voice still as mellow as it usually was. We saved Tingen. After saying this, it was as if he had returned to the time when he was 20. He no longer appeared stern and serious as he winked at everyone with his left eye. That reminded Selina of the first time Dunn winked at her. This time, it was precious. Klein's devastated face turned to Selina as the luster in his eyes disappears. He heard her say in a fading voice. In the most gentlest, softest way she can. Thank you, for everything. Joe. She whispered. Thump. The box of St. Selina's ashes fell onto the ground, that meant Dunn collapsed, just like Klein's heart. At the same time. Leonard behind him also fell backward, the wriggling things all across his face and half-body slowly subsided. Klein couldn't held on much longer as well. His weakening body collapsed with the weight of Selina. But just he did, he used all of his strength to held her head from the impact. Thud. Thud. Even though the box wasn't covered, the darkness within the box sealed the opening, preventing the resplendent sand-like ashes from falling out. The box rolled a distance away towards Klein. Dunn Smith fell to the wrecked floor, his deep gray eyes having lost all their luster. He was looking at the hole in the ceiling, the sunlight pouring down on his face. Captain, and now Selina. Klein's vision blurred once again. He wanted to shout, but that word and the subsequent words were stuck in his throat. At that moment, the box containing St. Selina's ashes had rolled to his feet. Suddenly, Klein felt a pain in his chest, his pupils violently constricted as he froze in place. He looked down to see a slightly pale palm, drenched in blood, coming out the left side of his chest. No. No. Selina's lifeless body had pulled a surmount of blood on top of Klein. No. Zanguil. I'll find you. I'll kill you. I'll hunt you down. Klein's face contorted into anguish. He saw that same pale hand scoop a blood of Selina, before illusory dark chains enveloped all her blood and bundled them into a chunk of wood. The wood formed a glassy ovoid body, containing blood, Selina's blood. Klein quickly lost his consciousness, his eyes almost losing focus. After it now possesses the wood-made bottle, the person walked away with a pair of brand-new leather boots. It bent down in the same hand and grabbed the urn of St. Selina's ashes. Klein's vision went black, and he lost all consciousness. Burned and shattered objects were scattered around in the now destroyed Blackthorn Security Company, but there wasn't a single sound, it was just like a cemetery. A few minutes later, Leonard Mitchell's body moved, his eyes opening slowly. He propped himself up with difficulty and surveyed the surroundings. He saw Dunn Smith on the ground. He also saw Klein, who had his eyes staring wide as a look of shock was plastered across his face as Selina waits on his body with a huge hole on her back. Dunn, Klein, and Selina all had visible wounds on the left sides of their chests. No. Leonard squeezed out the word from his throat as he staggered towards Klein and Selina's corpse, that wasn't far away from Dunn. He kept checking them, going between the three repeatedly, but all he could do was accept this irreversible truth. Leonard's knees buckled as his knees plopped to the ground. His green eyes were filled with pain as tears streamed down his cheeks, washing away the blood and dust. He turned his head and listened for 2 seconds and suddenly sprawled forward. He let out an angry roar and clenched his palms into fists, and heavily pounded the floor. Thump. 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 Leonard kept tearing up as he pounded the floor. Amidst his sorrow was a feeling of clear hatred and a clear sense of self-abhorrence. Thud. 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 Leonard looked up when he heard the sounds of hurried footsteps and saw the members of the mandated punishers and the machinery hive mind that had just arrived at the scene through his blurred vision. Chapter 237, Story. In a Tinjin suburb, there was a house with a green lawn. The house had a garden that had begun to wither at the beginning of September. Attached to the house was a crimson chimney. There was a desk next to the window in the bedroom of that house. On top of a dresser, there's a Tinjin City Humble newspaper that's in the open. The rural town of Milo, a hive of cult. Apart from it, an ordinary notebook was spread open on the table. A slightly pale hand flipped the notebook to the very first page, then it quickly flipped to the back. As the paper flipped, the rows of words appeared faintly. Regents, a member from the secret order, sold the Antigonus family's notebook as an ordinary ancient book by accident due to the influence both of weariness and illusions. It was a coincidence that made logical sense. Affected by the calling of the Antigonus family's bloodline, the notebook secretly affects its owners, one after the other. After repeated changes in ownership, it came to Tinjin. It fell into the hands of the members of the Aurora Order, Sirius Arapis and Hanas Vincent. After they flipped through the content that temporarily appeared in the notebook and copied the corresponding potion formulas, Sirius and Hanas were worried that the secret order, who were good at divination, would track them down. After discussing it, they decided to avoid the risk by selling it to another person. They didn't wait for Mr. Z's reply, perhaps because he stayed at Enmat Harbor. Through Sirius's introduction, Hanas got to know Welch McGovern from the Koei University's Department of History. Then, Hanas sold the Antigonus family's notebook to McGovern as an ordinary ancient book. Subsequently, Sirius was attracted by the treasure that was said to exist on the main peak of the Hornaces mountain range. He started to visit the Deweyville Library and research the mountain. He didn't think that there would be any problems, so he left his real address and name. That aligned with his personality. During this process, he acquainted himself with Lenivus, who was reading up on information about iron mines to set up a scam. Lenivus's hidden lunacy and swindling ability were well appreciated by Sirius. He decided to nurture him into a member of the Aurora Order. Of course, before that, an investigation was inevitable. Sirius covertly informed Lenivus about the evil ritual of praying to the true creator to deliver his spawn into this world. But he knew that the possibility of Lenivus succeeding was very low, because the difficulty level of the ritual was very high, and the requirements were very harsh. However, the latter expressed his strong interest in the matter, tempted by the possibility of obtaining a deity's approval. He planned to complete the ritual simultaneously as he carried out the plans of establishing his steelworks company. The cunning Lenivus could tell that there was something fishy about Sirius Arapis. But for his personal goal, he didn't expose him. He visited Hyujin in the asylum once again. They had known each other long ago, and they knew about their respective situations. After a dark divination, the Antigonus family's notebook was awakened fully. Welch and his classmate died. The lucky survivor, Klein Moretti, sent it to Ray Bieber's house under the influence of the notebook. It was a destined ending. Many rows were scribbled off and new content followed. For some baffling reason, and a lack of sufficient explanations, Klein didn't commit suicide after that and somehow managed to stay alive. In the Nighthawks investigation of Welch's case that followed, he met Dunn Smith and joined the Nighthawks. Although it had already exceeded in Zangwill's description, it didn't affect the development of the story. A sudden smudge was seen, it resumed another line. The only descendant left of the Ivory family from Milo will arrive in Tinjin North District. Thyan's brother Ruth encountered the only descendant left of the Ivory family from Milo that arrived in Tinjin North District. Due to her appearance, many suitors had their minds crossed in asking her a hand. Sadly, she wasn't all that beautiful. In her journey in Tinjin, a group of mandated punisher that was handled by the case from Milo arrived on her door to invite her and seek her name one way or the other. Selena Roy was written on the forged identity document she received for the Ivory estate inheritance. Ruther Hudsman was a doctor, secretly a vampire, a member of the Rose School of Thought and half-member of the Child of Gods faction. Through the desire of retrieving the lost vessel of their goddess, Selena Roy, they convened to settle her significance. It was revealed the goddess's vessel is currently bearing their goddess. In mystical sense, she's equivalent to the Child of God and the Child of God is her. It was a success. However, the goddess remained dormant. At some point, Selena figured that running is futile. She chose to confront the Rose School of Thought and the Child of God's faction. She found Daffodil Street and settled there. Under a sort of reference. Selena tried making a crude bomb in the comforts of her rented house, depriving the currently scouting Rose School of Thoughts their chance of finding her. The bomb was a success, it will aid her in leading them to Blackthorn Security Company where the Nighthawks will be ready. The recent line was crossed out. Under a sort of chances. Selena found a fireworks shop and decided to dismiss the crude bomb. Her planned chase was a success. It led her during the night of Saturday to Blackthorn Security Company where the Nighthawks will be ready, because the St. Selena Church is closed. It was planned. During the chase, Marvik, who's disguised as Merrick, son of Duford Merrick and Flora Merrick, was a member of the Rose School of Thought who originated from South Continent. He's a Sequence 9 Scrooge and he felt intense desire for what everyone desires, which is Selina. He got hold of her blood. After the death of Diemsfell's puppet, Selina met Dunn, Leonard, Klein, and the rest of the Nighthawks. They became skeptical of her. Thus, leading to Dunn offered her to join an officer, using her father's gun as an excuse. Selina accepted the offer. Bacchus and his brothers were down on their luck. They lost their last chip at the gambling tables and were drowning in debt. In a bid to obtain money, they decided to kidnap and blackmail the somewhat wealthy individuals. When they were looking for their final hideout, they chanced upon the room opposite Ray Bieber's apartment. By then, Ray Bieber was already seduced by the power offered by the Antigonus family's notebook. He hoped to digest the gift left behind by his ancestors. However, he was in a semi-insane state, and he couldn't make the best and safest choice. He abandoned his dead mother, but he continued remaining in Tingen City. He only found a more elusive spot to carry out his digestion ritual. It was truly pathetic. If he had been slightly smarter, the story could have become even more complicated, but his decision was made based on his instincts and his poor state of mind. Bacchus and company purchased weapons and took the youngest son, Elliot, of the tobacco merchant, Vicroy, and held him for ransom. Finally, they successfully carried out the abduction and took Elliot back to the apartment opposite Ray Bieber's. Vicroy's butler was entrusted with looking for help from a security company. Because of Welch's mysterious death, security companies were short on hands. Clee chanced upon a deliveryman and happened to discover the existence of the Blackthorn Security Company. Leonard Mitchell and Klein accepted the job. Relying on their beyonder powers, they quickly saved the merchant's son. Regrettably, Klein didn't immediately realize that clues to the Antigonus family's notebook were in the apartment opposite them. However, his spirituality reminded him in his dream. As such, the Tingen Nighthawks discovered corresponding clues. Sealed artifact 2-049 arrived in Tingen. With the aid of the Antigonus family's puppet, Dunn Smith led the Nighthawks to find Ray Bieber before interrupting his digestion procedure. Ray Bieber became a monster, and the situation was out of control. In the end, the Nighthawks skillfully worked together and took care of Monster Bieber, but they immediately faced the attack of a member from the Secret Order. More rows were scribbled away again, and the original content was impossible to read. Leonard Mitchell, who possesses a secret, was going to end the situation. Before he could, Klein, who was supposed to be doomed, killed the Sequence 7 member from the Secret Order in an inexplicable manner. That didn't affect the development of the story. Dunn Smith got in touch with the Antigonus family's notebook and flipped through its content. From that point onwards, he was secretly tainted. Selina was actually living next to a lunatic Moroi Roundel who had lost everything from the Grain Act. However, she discovered that Moroi Roundel is in possession of a mysterious ornament, a meteorite. Moroi got in touch with a mysterious evil deity that surpasses dimensions to meet him. He easily got corrupted by turning into half-shaman. The subsequent lines suddenly glitched. Moroi found out it wanted Selina or Selina's blood. What a turn of event. Because of this, Selina began to experience nightmares when Moroi touched her. She was doomed to die and Moroi would suddenly lost control. Then, there was another refixed lines. Selina lived. Thanks to this Moroi was found. For precautions, he placed the meteorite inside his bedroom, next to the window, and in the same thought, the police officers cleared out the area. The raid happened and Selina will be killed where everyone except Leonard is unconscious. Moroi will then be killed thanks to Leonard's secret, where he too will faint. Another scribbled lines fades with the news ones over it. For an inexplicable reason. Selina had a strange seed and that sprouts into a javelin. She threw and it killed Moroi right to his weakness, his crest. Due to their exhausted bodies and need for medical care, they left Unit 15 Daffodil Street entirely unsupervised for an entire hour. Since the meteorite will contaminate the area, the kind Int Zangwill took it for safekeep. Int Zangwill suddenly felt walking outside for leisure with the 0-08 quill in hand. He stumbled upon Selina during it. Unnoticeable rows were then resentenced. Everyone in the vicinity was so busy, Int Zangwill disappeared and they thought they were hallucinating, especially Selina. Having finished with all his preparations, Lenivus beguiled Hadugin and used him to assist in his ritual. They tricked Lenivus's fiancée, Megos, to become the vessel that would carry the true creator's spawn. Lenivus had almost no possibility of success. The most serious problem was that even though Megos would be protected by the ritual's power, she wouldn't be able to withstand the sexual intercourse with the illusory projection of a deity. It would cost her her life on the altar. At that moment, the kind Int Zangwill helped Lenivus in secret. He split off half a piece of a descendant of death's characteristic that he obtained and planted it into Megos' body ahead of time. Hadugin made Megos enter a semi-unconscious state and convinced her that the true creator's illusory projection was Lenivus. Nourished by the accumulated resentment, gloominess, and oppression of the factory district, the ritual succeeded. Megos was pregnant with the true creator's spawn. The deity saw through the coincidences, but since he wished to break through the shackles placed on him by the 7 deities, he didn't refuse. Hyojin was contaminated. After the ritual succeeded, the mad Lenivus regained his rationality. He clearly knew that if the deity's spawn was to descend into the world, Lenivus, himself, would become one of the sacrificial offerings. How could a mortal be the father of a deity's son? This was blasphemy of the highest order. Lenivus decided to leave Tingen ahead of time and left clues to the Nighthawks, the mandated punishers, and the machinery hive mind so that they could resolve the repercussions of his actions. There was ultimately a price needed for lunacy. However, Lenivus didn't write the letter directly to the Beyonder squads. He thought it would make him look stupid. He decided to leave the letter in one of the houses that he rented. He pretended to be playing a game with the Beyonders from official bodies. As such, he didn't bring up Hyojin's contamination and brought with him everything that he had obtained. Just in case, he informed Sirius Arapis in the safest way he could. The latter didn't quite believe him, but he could faintly feel the possibility of success. Selena would accidentally chanced upon the real magic mirror divination incantation from her mysticism teacher, Hannes Vincent. Her bold attempt was interrupted by Klein Moretti by coincidence. The latter successfully resolved this supernatural incident that might have caused serious casualties. The Nighthawks then investigated Hannes Vincent, who had recently been awarded. Therefore, Dunsmith coincidentally saw a clear image of the true creator in his dream and suffered severe injuries. However, he wasn't contaminated because of what happened. That would have been noticed by the upper echelons of the Nighthawks. The injury made Dunsmith's contamination by the Antigonus family notebook worsen. His absent-mindedness and forgetfulness worsened, and he was getting closer and closer to satisfying Nsangwil's requirements. Marvik wanted Selena to himself as trophy. She was beautiful, unique, and everyone wanted her. He suddenly found a meteorite on the roadside. He prayed to the chained god and found its uniqueness. The lines had contorts in between them. Marvik found that even gods wanted Selena, or her blood. He then became so obsessed that he got in touch with Carter, a director of a company operating undersea Lagna to import goods and allow human trafficking. He works 2 ways with the Demonist sect and Rose school of thought. Carter was offered by Marvik a chance to become a Scrooge. He became a Scrooge. Due to this, more of the lower-class people was deprived. However, this will open up riots against the company. Thus, he stayed across his house at Westborough, Middle Street to prepare for his and Marvik's departure after the latter informed that the Rose School of Thought is being put under investigation. Carter left as soon as his golden toilet was retrieved. The Halsterven Company, a company under the Rose School of Thought, the retrieval company that aided Carter, was also placed under investigation thanks to Selena and Klein's presence, so they left. However, Marvik stayed and used the remaining resources, Selena's blood, the chained god's will and the meteorite to prepare for a dark ritual. Convinced that he can simply return to reclaim her once the tension settles. Then, he disguised himself after finding Selena at Blackthorn Security Company. He planted the fruit of the dark ritual next to Blackthorn Security Company before leaving, allowing it to germinate. But it was buried shallowly, and its size was a grain. The wind lifted it off toward the house with the red chimney. The seed returned back to its spot, buried again deeper by the wind. Many rows were scribbled away again. Seriously unbelievable. Klein Moretti noticed Nsangwil's secret influence and saw the crimson chimney. This is because he was reminded by the teacher from the Koei University's Department of History, Azik. He possesses many secrets. But even so, it's astounding enough for Klein to discover actual clues. It's unexplainable. Regardless of the reason, Nsangwil continued to act, and the story continues. Klein coincidentally ran into Sirius at the library and had no choice but to kill him. Hence, the clues leading to Lenivus were abruptly severed, and the discovery of the problem was delayed. Klein met Megos, but his spirituality stopped him from observing her closely. However, he didn't notice the subtle abnormality. That is logical. Our stories aren't made up randomly. He searched for the red chimney, but he always opted for a route that didn't include his target. Maybe in another 2 or 3 months, when he was on the last batch, he would find the real red chimney house. Rows and rows of writings were scribbled away, more than all of the previous rows added together. Dunsmith's problem was alleviated. His condition obviously became better. He actually mastered the acting method. And this was taught to him by Klein Moretti, who found inspiration from Daily Simone and Old Neil's example. No, Nsangwil didn't believe that, but he could only change his original plan slightly. New elements in the story came to play. Azik decided to go to Backlund in search of his lost memories. It wasn't long until Klein and Dunn found clues from Hyojin. There were rows, various rows with ingrained linings were scribbled. Unbelievable. Selena found out Nsangwil is in Tingen. Utterly unprecedented. However, this does not destroy Nsangwil's plan. Because Selina had just advanced to sequence 8, her mind must be tilting. Dunn did not saw anything in her dream, thus he saw her as someone losing control. Klein and Leonard were the only ones that retained cautionary of the name ensanguil, but they still couldn't find any nodes about him. In order to ensure that Tingen City's Conservative Party and New Party would be in complete opposition, Madame Sharon, who wanted to vent the accumulated madness after her transformation, decided to take the risk and murder Member of Parliament John Maynard. Hence, the Nighthawk's plan failed. Kenley reflected himself in the mirror due to his nervousness and saw himself. Madame Sharon was taken care of while Kenley died. Dunn blamed himself and consumed Kenley's beyonder characteristic as he usually did. His digestion procedure was interrupted as a result and was delayed. As such, his mental state became unstable. Under the circumstances, Leonard and Klein noticed the letter left behind by Lenivas. Due to the unfavored events, Selina kept being distracted and she couldn't simply join them. Her mind began deteriorating, giving the seed nourishment. Azek was in Backlund, but he wasn't a traveler, so he couldn't rush back in such short notice. Black Cat Fallacy was also preoccupied with something else. He lost connection with Selina. A few rows were scribbled away. Megos became a monster, and the fight began. With the aid of the Saint's Urn, Blood Vessel Thief, and 3 high-level charms that strangely appeared, it was time for the Tree of Chains and Wonder to erupt. In the chained painted world of the tree, Megos died. The spawn lost its divinity permanently even if it got resurrected. Leonard used his secret. Together with Selina controlling the world, they obliterated the Tree of Chains and Wonder. However, the resurrected Megos is still intact, susceptible to the divinity they have. Selina was killed and Dunn died as a result, and the power of Saint Selina's ashes was severely damaged as well. That went perfectly with Ensanguil's intentions. Ensanguil didn't get a chance to showcase himself, but it didn't hinder him from achieving his goal. He killed Klein Moretti, the fellow who kept disrupting his plans, and he took away Saint Selina's ashes. Finally, the 2 people who are against him are finally dead. Ensanguil set up a ritual with the remaining half of the characteristic of Death's descendant. He consumed Saint Selina's ashes and successfully advanced from Sequence 5 of the Death Sequence Pathway, Gatekeeper, to Sequence 4 of the Evernight Sequence Pathway, Night Watcher. As such, he received godhood characteristics and became a demigod. The sun continues to shine brilliantly on the land. Nearly no one in Tingen City realized how they narrowly escaped a huge disaster. The full-fledged monster Adamasol would be left very confused about it. The notebook was flipped to the last page. A middle-aged man that was holding onto the book had dark blonde hair, a dark blue eye that was nearly black, a tall nose, and tightly pursed lips. His facial features were like that of a statue and didn't have a single wrinkle. He held a classic quill with his slightly pale hand and wrote a line clearly without dipping into any ink. He ended with a simple sentence. Tingen's story ends here. The papers rustled as he closed the book, leaving only a brown cover. Chapter 238, Funeral. In the basement of St. Selina Cathedral, in the guardroom outside Cheney's Gate. Leonard Mitchell was leaning on the back of his chair, his legs were propped up on the table. His eyes were vacant without any focus. Even though he had been healed using ritualistic magic, he still looked terrible, as if he had obtained reprieve from a severe illness without fully recovering. At the moment, the powerful Beyonder sent by the Holy Cathedral were creating another seal behind the Cheney's Gate since the ashes of St. Selina was lost. They had conflicting opinions, some wanting to fill in the gap of power using a new holy item, while the others believed that there was no need to go through all the trouble. After all, to the Church of the Evernight Goddess, holy items were rare and incredibly precious. What they suggested was lowering the presence of the Nighthawks in Tingen and transferring the artifacts with living characteristics or difficult-to-seal artifacts to the headquarters at the Cathedral of Serenity in Backlund's diocese, only leaving behind those that could be controlled more easily. They intended to send a telegram to propose a meeting of the higher-ups, to get a vote from the archbishops and high-ranking deacons. Leonard was uninterested in this debate. He felt as if he had become a living corpse, with no sorrow, grief, agitation, or excitement. He was abnormally numb. He didn't want to face anyone. All he wanted was to stay alone in the corner. Occasionally, he would feel puzzled about why the murderer would only take away Selina and Klein's Beyonder characteristic and leave Captain Dunsmith's one intact. Sometimes he would even wonder where Selina's left hand was thrown off. Thud. 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 Footsteps reverberated in the corridor. Sikatron, whose right arm had been bandaged, appeared at the door of the guardroom. While Klein and the others were attacking Megos and attempting to save Tingen City, she and the keepers within Cheney's Gate were doing battle against a portion of the sealed artifacts. If it wasn't for the timely arrival of the members of the mandated Punishers and the machinery hive mind, or the eventual arrival of the reinforcements from the Holy Cathedral, she also might have lost her life. But even so, the elderly keeper failed to last until the end. He fought to his death, under the call of duty. Leonard, I found an unencrypted telegram in the captain's office. It was sent over by the Holy Cathedral, Sikatron said. Leonard's green eyes moved slightly, finally coming to life. He faintly recalled the sound of a new telegram coming in, but the battle was about to begin. He and Klein didn't have the time to pay attention to it whilst Selina was late when it happened. What does it say? Leonard noticed that his tone was unusually raspy. The white-haired and black-eyed Sikatron replied without hesitation, "Beware of Insangwil. Beware of sealed artifact 0-08. Insangwil, the archbishop that betrayed the church, the gatekeeper who failed his advancement. Sealed artifact 0-08, an ordinary-looking quill." Leonard muttered at first as he searched his memories, then he tilted his head to the side. He suddenly narrowed his eyes, the dispirited feelings and sadness disappeared from his body. So that's how it was. Leonard pulled his feet back and stood up, his green eyes burning with a passion. He looked at Sikatron and said, "I intend to apply to join the Red Gloves." The Red Gloves was a code name for the elite team of Nighthawks. Under normal circumstances, Nighthawk teams were situated locally and had regions under their jurisdiction. They were not permitted to capture criminals outside of their area of jurisdiction without permission. As such, some evildoers would change their location after every crime, making it terribly inconvenient for the Nighthawks. To deal with this, the Church of the Evernight Goddess set up the Red Gloves. They were carefully selected elites, some even possessing incomplete holy items. Their mission was to reinforce Nighthawk teams that had called for help, as well as track down and arrest evildoers without any restrictions. In some circles, they were also called pursuers or hunting dogs. Red Gloves. But their lowest requirement is sequence 7. Besides, the dangers the Red Gloves face are many times higher than an ordinary Nighthawk squad, Sikatron said in concern and doubt. Leonard smiled coldly. "I'm close to advancing soon." His eyes became cold. He clenched his teeth and said to himself, "I want revenge. Insangwil, you must live until the day I become powerful enough. I will hunt you down and kill you." Leonard slid his hands to his pocket and took out the vial containing the seed the White Maiden gave him. He then held it close. "You'll pay for what you took away." "What is that?" Sika's eyes were directed to the vial with curiosity. "It's nothing. Something like a memento I hold dearly." Leonard stood up. "All right." Sika seemed to have guessed Leonard's thoughts. She sighed. "Almost half of our team will be new faces. It's rare to see a Nighthawk team become so ravaged." Leonard's expression darkened. He clenched his teeth and asked, "Are the bodies ready?" "Yes." Sika nodded indiscernibly. Leonard suddenly stepped towards the door. "I'll notify their families. I'll deal with the scene I don't want to deal with the most. I'll do it." At 2 Daffodil Street, Melissa sat on the sofa, inspecting the 4 tickets in her hands. She was looking at the words, the printed date, and the seat numbers. "I hope Selina will be discharged today." Benson was sitting beside her, observing his sister with a smile. He had a relaxed posture while replying, assuming that's what Klein overstayed about. "I'm sure he'll return," holding her hand. Suddenly, they heard the doorbell. Ding dong, ding dong. Melissa glanced at their busy maid Bella, then she took the 4 tickets with her and stood up, looking a little confused. She briskly ran to the door. Her black hair was shinier than it was before, her face no longer skinny. The color of her skin had a ruddy color, and her brown eyes looked brighter and energetic. Twisting the handle and opening the door, Melissa froze for a moment. She didn't recognize their visitor. It was a young man with black hair and green eyes. He looked handsome, but his face was unusually pale. Hidden in his eyes was deep sorrow. "May I know who you are?" Melissa asked, feeling somewhat lost. Leonard had specially draped a black formal coat over his white shirt. He said in a raspy voice, "I'm a colleague of your brother Klein and Selina." Melissa's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She instinctively tiptoed to look behind Leonard but didn't notice anything. She said with a strange quiver in her voice, "Where's Klein? Where's Selina?" Leonard closed his eyes, inhaling as he said, "I'm very sorry, your brother Klein died at the hands of an evil criminal while he was trying to save others. He's a hero, a true hero. As for Selina, she helped alongside him, but unfortunately suffered the same fate." Melissa widened her eyes slowly, her body shaking indiscernibly. The 4 tickets in her hands dropped helplessly onto the floor. The tickets faced upward, revealing the name of the play, The Return of the Count. Sitting in the Moretti family's living room, Leonard didn't dare to look directly at Melissa and Benson. But he couldn't stop scenes of what they looked like from flashing through his mind. That girl filled with youthfulness and vibrancy had her eyes wide open. She didn't speak, and her eyes were unfocused. Her silence made her appear like a puppet. The man who looked a little like Klein maintained a normal posture, but he would slip into a daze from time to time. His words came out slowly. "That's the gist of the matter. I'm very sorry that I was unable to prevent it in a timely manner. The Blackthorn Security Company, the police department, and those that he helped have promised a bereavement compensation of about £12,000. It's usually £6,000 for one member, but I'm sure that Selina would like you both to have hers," Leonard said, as his eyes darted around. Suddenly, Benson interrupted him. His voice was hoarse as he asked, "Where's their bodies?" "I'm asking where's Selina and Klein's bodies." He puckered his lips and paused. "When can we see them?" "In the company." "You can see them now," Leonard answered, unable to mask his grief. "All right." Benson moved his rigid lips with great difficulty. "Let me use the bathroom first." Without waiting for Leonard's reply, he quickly entered the bathroom and slammed the door closed. He stood in front of the sink and turned on the tap, allowing the water to flow. He bent down and repeatedly splashed water onto his face. As he did that, his actions came to a sudden stop. Nothing changed for a long time, leaving only the sound of running water reverberating in the bathroom. A few minutes later, Benson lifted his head and looked into the mirror. He saw that his face was covered in water droplets. The redness in his eyes was impossible to hide now. A few days later, in a corner of the Raphael cemetery. After finishing Klein and Dunn's funeral, the crowd gathered before a new tombstone. On it was Selina's black and white photograph, a standard-issued photograph after becoming an officer. She had a gentle smile, almost motherly. Her silver hair was tucked behind that it curls into her signature braided bun. Melissa stood before the grave, in deep red when it was her brother's turn. However now, it's even her accepted sisters. Leonard, Benson, Fry, and Brett carried the coffin and walked over, lowering the coffin into the grave. After the priest gave the eulogy and individual prayers, the grave was filled with soil, covering the black coffin bit by bit. At this moment, Melissa knelt down, allowed the silver pocket to fall from her hand before picking Fallacy up from her feet. Meow. There was a slight note to its usual sound. Leonard turned and looked at the scene, his heart wincing. However, he admired how strong this girl was. He knew that this girl didn't cry after receiving the bad news. Instead, she stayed pitifully quiet. The grave was leveled and a stone slab was laid over it. Leonard took a final look at Selina's tombstone. There were 3 lines to her epitaph. The best, caring and loving future elder sister. The best future sister. The best colleague. Under the mournful atmosphere, the members of the Blackthorn Security Company gradually left. Marl and Martha also bade farewell in tears under the context of everyone leaving. The only people left behind were Benson and Melissa. After setting their mourns, they went for Klein's tomb. "I'll get a rental carriage." Benson was in a terrible condition. It was as if he hadn't slept for a long time. "All right." Melissa nodded. She squatted down where Fallacy is circling and buried her face in her arms. After some silence, Melissa suddenly scolded, "Stupid. Sis Selina will scold you." But her lips quivered to a halt, and she closed them. She cried as she wept silently. Her tears just wouldn't stop. Nighttime, at the Raphael cemetery. The copper-skinned Azek stood in front of Klein's grave holding a bouquet of white flowers. He didn't speak for the longest time until he finally sighed and muttered to himself, "I'm sorry, I was 10 minutes late. But I think I know who it was." He bent over and set the bouquet of flowers down before turning to leave the cemetery. He also left Tingen, but he didn't retrieve the copper whistle. The place was quiet and serene under the illumination of the crimson moonlight. Suddenly, the stone slab sealing the grave was flipped open. A pale hand extended out from the soil. A hand came out. Whoosh! The gravestone was shoved aside. The lid of the coffin was pushed open. Klein sat upright and looked around, lost. His memory was still frozen at the scene with the brand new leather boots, and the palm that grabbed onto the urn of St. Selina's ashes. Everything after that felt like a dreamless sleep. Klein instinctively lowered his head and unbuttoned his shirt. He looked at the left side of his chest, only to see that his ravaged injury and missing heart were squirming as they healed, similar to how he recovered from the bullet wound through his temple back when he looked into the mirror. The only difference was that this time, the recovery was much slower and much more difficult. Chapter 239, Grieving Clown. In the northern part of the Lone Kingdom, the September breeze, that had an additional coldness to it, howled through the cemetery. It was even gloomier and colder than usual. The cold jolted Klein back to his senses as he muttered to himself about resurrection, minced body, and secrets of transmigration. Secrets behind transmigration. Selina. His heart palpitated. She's a transmigrator. Similar to me. She'll be alive. She'll be fine. Boom. Right as Klein was about to carry the rest of his body up from his tombstone. Heavy downpour suddenly came to drench him. What a luck. I'm the king of yellow and black who wields good luck, but it just had to be now. Klein lampooned as he withdrew his hand from testing the rain. His hair was now drenched. Patter. 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 After half a minute, Klein buttoned his suit and realized that he was wearing his newest shirt and tuxedo, but they were now covered in soil, dirt, and is soaked in the rain. I had to find a shelter for us to warm up once I see her. He scanned the vicinity, the tombs that laid there, and began to wonder. Where is she anyway? Is the resurrection takes a bit longer for another person? Then, Klein lifted his left hand and saw the topaz pendant that was still wrapped around his wrist. I guess this is considered a burial object. He gave a self-deprecating laugh and took off the pendulum. I can search for Captain's tomb with this. But first I want to see if Selina finally woke up. A second later, he figured that it would be best to divine her tomb. He took 4 counterclockwise motion and proceeded to ascend into the grey fog. Klein took the seat of honor as usual and conjured up a topaz pendulum. He wrote in a goatskin parchment. Selina's tomb location. This time around, he felt slightly more relaxed. If she's able to resurrect, that meant that destiny was really just his lack of information about transmigrators. He leaned back to his chair, then recited the sentence 7 times under cogitation. Klein entered a dream. In the hazy dream world filled with darkness. A light under a pouring rain brought a scene of a tomb, etched on it is, Selina Roy, followed by, best future younger sister, best colleague, best, caring and gentle future sister. Klein's mouth twitched. Very forward. Then, he memorized the location before exiting the dream and plummeting back to his heavily cold body. He took a look one last time at his own tomb when he returned. Benson and Melissa really have no idea how to save money. The thought popped into his head. He supported his weight on his hand and flipped up into a standing position, realizing that he still had his clown abilities. The best elder brother. The best younger brother. The best colleague. Klein looked at his tombstone and read the inscription. He felt his heart wince, seemingly sensing the despondent feelings Melissa and Benson had experienced. This is probably even more depressing than watching Captain die before my eyes, he sighed and retracted his gaze. He squatted down and closed the coffin lid. His thoughts were still scattered, but Klein knew that he had to take care of the scene as soon as possible and not let anyone notice. Resurrection wasn't something any commoner could accept. If the Nighthawks, mandated punishers, or the machinery hive mind learned of this, Klein believed that he wouldn't have a great ending. Of course, if it was on Earth, he could deceive the people into believing that he was the blessed one of God, the men of salvation, had he consumed the lawyer or swindler potions. However, in the world he was in, there was a real God that could respond to rituals. He scraped the soil back together and covered it with the stone slab. Klein clapped his hands and stood up once again. At that moment, the scene didn't appear strange. He was just like a gentleman who came to offer his condolences late at night. The only oddity was that the person in the photo on the tombstone looked exactly like him. During the process of filling his grave, his spirituality noticed the existence of Azek's copper whistle. Hence, he dug it out and wiped it clean. However, Klein didn't intend to summon the messenger immediately. He decided to find Selina first and ascertain her condition. Her tomb should be there. He started walking around. Then, he gradually slowed down. Why was she taking a bit slower? Is it different for other transmigrators? Under the pouring rain, Klein kept an arm to shelter his vision from blurring. However, he suddenly started pacing. Hey, we're both transmigrators, I am merely leveraging where we came from, not hoarding it. I don't hoard it. Especially for her. She should be digging out of her grave right now, confused like I was. Klein's heart suddenly winced. Her hands, they couldn't possibly dig out of the soil with her hands. What if she starts bleeding? Reaching this point, he wasn't pacing anymore, he was jogging. Then she won't be able to breathe. Klein ran. She'll die again out of suffocation, and I won't be there to help her. He sprinted, as fast as he can. Klein's eyes browsed each tomb he saw until he crossed a name that was blurred from the motion of his movement, Selina. After turning around, he finally stopped right before her tomb. Selina looked gorgeous in her photo, something he couldn't see before because of insanguine. He waited there for exactly 5 seconds. He didn't heard any sounds. Anxious and feeling unbearable, he squatted down and couldn't contain himself away from helping her anymore. Selina is alive. Klein clawed at the dirt like he did for his grave. His pupils were getting colder by seconds. Selina is alive. He repeated inside. Selina is alive. Selina is alive. Selina is alive. The dirt that was being brought aside gradually until it formed a mound behind. Klein didn't stop. In the heavy rain where his ears are numbed by the clattering of the drops, each pause as he made or seconds Selina remained suffocating. His thoughts were full of desire, wanting a smile from the transmigrator that might only be the one left in this era, the one he swore, promised to return home safe. Just promise you'll find me too. We'll return home. I promise. Pant. 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 Klein's fingers became cold, his movements became frantic and desperate. Selina is a transmigrator. The gray fog shouldn't have biases on any transmigrators it brought. Klein isn't exceptional. That was what kept burying Klein under the immense drowning thoughts. Then at that moment, his dirt-stained fingers finally hit a dark oak, the coffin's lid. Klein held his breath. His anticipation spiked. He recalled over the times Selina had teased him. She's sometimes a teaser, it's likely she'll burst out of the coffin and hug him very tightly. His trembling hands extended toward the lid. Silence took over him. Divination wouldn't be suitable because he already knows Selina is alive. At the moment Klein undid the lid as his soiled hands was washed by the rain. The heavy coffin's pane fell with a resounding thud. Selina's visage, resting against her back, her beautiful eyelashes glistened under the rain, her neatly tied braided bun hair resembled elegance even in the comfort of the death. She had her hands placed together, holding a silver pocket watch engraved with her initials. Klein fell into a daze. He saw an irreversible truth. The permanent indication of finality. What is this? This shouldn't happen. Selina, she's a transmigrator, why couldn't she resurrect like Klein? Just open your eyes. It's as simple as that. The gray fog's seat of honor. Klein buckled down and his knees plopped to the floor. He lost all strength as he just gazed onto the distant. I sat there, as Mr. Fool. I was using the gray fog, the origin of our transmigrator. He slowly casted his frozen eyes toward the peaceful Selina. I stole it. I deprived her to live. I. His dark brown eyes surged in pain as tears truly came down to chin and colliding with the rain. Klein lifted Selina's lifeless body, brought it close to his chest and looked up. A loud roar from him tore through the sounds of the gray curtains pelting amid the scene of tombs and distant lamplights. He's now alone. Truly alone. Hundreds of scenes replayed in his mind like a tempestuous tapestry. When they first met. Selina's shock turned to a soft smile. A memorable one. Hi. My name is Selina Roy. You must be Mr. Moretti. I'm pleased to meet you. Inside a carriage. You have siblings. Who are they? When they confessed. So it's you. I'm glad it's you. Every safety needs to be celebrated. Such a money pincher King Sunday. Remember my 3 conditions. You always tend to forget when you're overly excited. Clown. It already suits you hee. Just promise you'll find me too. Klein's silence made his scalp suddenly churned. Out of nowhere, gray blemishes began to sprout, hairs that did not resemble hairs protruded from every inch of his joints. What a mock of fate. What an inequitable turn of destiny. Klein is alive and Selina is not. Then why not just let the other die? I was just gone for a day and you already looked like this. Seemed you did not heard me King Sunday. We are guardians. Don't forget that we in the saying. I forgive you. But don't do that again. I forbid you. Tell me, ask me, I don't like how you keep this alone. Klein's thoughts were turning blank. His emotions began to deteriorate and he could feel his body burning up hotter, as if his joints was urging him to bend the pain away, tempting him to let the mask in. He doesn't know what to put on as he stared on the tomb blankly with the memories of her. If this continues, perhaps, Klein might lose control. It was all his fault. He should have abided her conditions. If he believed, and initiated a city rundown. Maybe Selina wouldn't have died. Zangwill would have been driven away. Don't blame yourself. Suddenly, Selina's voice rang inside his mind and a sliver of glint appeared on Klein's eyes for a brief moment. Clown smile. So smile. Hee, I just realized a perfect acting principle for you. Smile for me, will you? I can't recognize you. At that moment. Klein's lips twitched painfully. His mouth would tremble, sometimes curling, often falling. The raindrops continued to make a mess of his face. The hairs that are taking forms began to retract back to being corporeal. Then, Klein finally smiled. Ha. 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 I can't recognize you. Ha ha, ha ha ha. Klein looked above. His eyes turning quietly insane. He held Selina's peaceful face to his chest and he used the clown powers to its furthest extent. He made himself smile even wider. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Painful. It hurts. Selina, do you recognize me? Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Selina. I'm smiling. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Captain. We saved Tingen. Look, I'm happy. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Won't anyone recognize me? Selina, wake up and recognize me. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Klein's burning and aching throat slowly calmed down. His crazy laugh failed to reach anywhere. He felt a puddle of water forming around his knees, reflecting his image. He looked terrifying. He appeared horrifyingly morbid, like a lunatic, a maniac, and a fool. Who would actually find Klein in this face? It's most likely Selina. But she's gone. Klein bent his head down. He stayed that way for quite some time. Not saying anything. Under the pouring, heavy rain, he felt something was breaking from inside him. Sliding faster as if it would drown him. But he's already drowning. His clown mask looked very happy now than ever. Before Klein realized it, he was grinning again. He widened it into a frightening, crazy, but joyful smile. At this moment, the clown potion inside him was digested instantly. Int Zangwil. Lenivus. Marvik. I'll find all of you. Chapter 240, Beauty. Inside of a room, in a middle-class apartment. The furnishing around the corners looked nothing peculiar. They're merely made of oak and frozen fibers. But this one seemed to have a tenant. Only that they haven't returned today yet. Likely out to socialize with friends or peers for this late night. On the other area, where the bedroom lies and connects to a roof by the window. Beyond its glass panes, under the heavy rain, seemed to look like an arm, a pale arm with a bloody end. Bathed in the course of moonlight and soaked, it suddenly twitched, looking more like a horror scene. A zombie hand. Using its fingers like limbs turn a circle on the spot, looking around side to side and finally noticing a window. From here it looked like it's unlatched. What an irresponsible tenant. But it was luck for the hand. Quickly, the hand ran toward the window and it slammed itself against it, helping itself to intrude the room. At that moment, the bloody end of the hand where milky white bone is seen suddenly had its skin patched the ends of it. Then, reflecting how an amphibian would regrow a limb, it regenerated to mold a figure. The figure had a much more mature face. With sharp button nose, pale beautiful skin, slender waist, voluptuous shape and rosy brown hair. Her dark brown eyes reflects the shimmering taint of the moonlight. The woman carefully walked to the sofa, grabbed the blanket folded there and draped it around her body. Meow, hello my lady. Suddenly, the woman that got reformed from a zombie hand, that became a stunning, captivating and alluring woman with refined bearings jumped in fright at a silhouette of a feline from the window. Phew. She exhaled a relief, realizing she still have her beast tamer abilities. Fallacy, you scared me. Selina chuckled as she pressed a finger to her lips, using her other hand to held the blanket. She added, how did you find me? How did you know I'm alive? I was bound to you the moment you offered and I accepted your proposal as your first tamed beast. Hence, I am capable of sensing your ether body. It tells me you're alive. Meow Fallacy explained, its fur is noticeably drenched. There was a bound. A contract. You should come inside. It's cold. Selina suddenly tilted her head in confusion, keeping the blanket around her body intact. I made it so there is now. Meow an old ancient voice came from Fallacy as it jumped down again to the roof. Where is he going now? Selina sighed and decided to look around for anything resembling a wardrobe. She'll need to borrow whatever clothes is present, the task Fallacy to remember the place so that she can withdraw an amount and pay it back. Selina isn't unethical. She wouldn't be a thief, not even in this world. Unexpectedly, a second later, Fallacy returned gnawing at and taking a hold of a briefcase with its teeth. Selina gasped, Fallacy. You're so smart. How? Isn't that heavy? The cat lifted the baggage with all its might as if something else is helping it. Once it entered from the window, it ran and perched right back onto the wooden sill. Meow, I'm strong. Respect me my lady. Fallacy raised its paws and began licking as if the physical weight that told on it was nothing. Oh yes. Very strong. Selina cheekily smiled and walked over to reach the baggage. Then suddenly, she lifted her head. She saw that Fallacy is already gone from the window. It made her feel relieved that it understands her. Not some penny pincher I know. Stubborn. I wonder how's he now. I better check him later. Selina muttered to herself before bending with her knees to fetch some clothes. Rumble. Patter. Patter. After half a minute, Selina adjusted her cotton-sewn shrug draped over her shoulders and patted the dust off her knitted khaki dress. Luckily, it didn't get wet when the baggage was carried over. I'm glad the baggage is thick. I wonder how Fallacy got past Melissa and Benson. She looked outside the pouring rain, it was dark. Only now did she have the time to assemble her mind after her body's reformation. This is strange. It doesn't look like it came from the gray fog. From Mr. Fool. Selina flexed her gloved wrist while checking her body from head to toe. Suddenly, she jolted. Ah. Did Fallacy heard that? Casting her gaze to the window, it doesn't seem to have any living soul perched onto it, nor does Selina feel any presence waiting for her. Phew. That's a relief. Selina bent down again. It must be due to the dream world. Perhaps the corruption I was in after Milo ritual succeeded caused this. I feel that I could only reform out of parts from my body. As for how many times, it doesn't exceed more than what my heart could handle. Likely 2 times. Right now I feel aches. Selina pressed a gentle pressure to her left chest. Wait, this means that if I reformed from my hand, I left a husk somewhere. It must have been buried by now. Her voice sounded paler. I wonder if the child of God within me left with that body. I'd be very glad if that's the case. Then, she casted her gaze to the baggage. How will I explain this to Klein, Melissa, Benson, and everyone? Meow, my lady. At that moment, Fallacy's silhouette was made from the plipping cadence outside. It leaped down, shook its body from wetness. Meow, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't able to find you. Nor do I have the means to protect you and everyone you care. Meow. Fallacy sat to a dresser, lowered its tiny head and apologized. A gentle laugh escaped Selina's luscious lips. She replied while smiling, it's fine. I'm much more worried if you did come. What if instead you die too? I die with honor. The feline said coldly, albeit hint with heroism. Grandpa, don't be spouting nonsense. Selina drooped her eyes and propped herself from the floor, carrying with her the baggage she owned. Fallacy then paced for a circle in its spot and sat again. Meow, I packed your wallet and your father's gun in there. So you won't have any issues with renting a place. Really? Selina's eyes lit up and she lowered the suitcase again. On one of the compartment, she felt a gun. Her fingers took it out and saw its brass luster under the crimson moonlight. Milo, father. She took a period of time to look at it before asking Fallacy, did you also pack my extra holster? Nodding, Fallacy answered, meow, I did. If I am not mistaken, it is a leg strap. Selina smiled in affirmation, yes. Fallacy, thank you. Meow, you're welcome, my lady. Unbeknownst to it, its neck began to vibrate as purrs resounded, at the same time its tail wagged gently. He looks happy. Selina felt light as she puts on the leg strap holster and sheathed her father's brass revolver inside. Now with her wallet, she briskly made her way to the room's entrance. The acoustic music of heavy rain outside masked her steps. Right next to the door was a rack. It had a gentleman's top hat and coat, which indicates that it's a male tenant. However, conveniently, there's an umbrella there. Selina grinned at Fallacy, who's following closely behind. Meow, pay for it. Fallacy wasn't in a mood to deal with ethical choices. Hearing that, with the petition from another party, Selina withdrew £3 from her wallet, placed them right on the rack and took the umbrella for herself. All right. Let's not disturb anyone and leave this complex quickly. Selina twisted the door and walked out, accompanying her is Fallacy with its green small eyes. Patter. 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 Under the umbrella. Selina clutched her baggage on her right arm and lifted her head to find a signage right outside a 3-story building. Fallacy was with her all throughout, and it doesn't intend to leave anymore. Even if rain persists, it tries to endure. All right. We'll sleep here. Fallacy, do you want to eat anything? There should be a canteen at the first floor. Selina looked down at the freezing cat. Meow, I just want to sleep. It said before resuming forward, leaving Selina behind. After booking a room, the duo found a space with one bed, a dresser, a curtained oriel windows that oversees the rainy street and nothing else. I need to visit the dream world. Selina felt she still had unfinished business to attend before reuniting with Klein and everyone. She glanced at Fallacy, who had already found its spot, and asked, are you really fine without eating? Me, I'm full, perhaps because I just got reformed. I'm fine, my lady, now get some rest. Meow. Fallacy slumped its head and used its own body as a cushion to fall asleep on. Selina exhaled and quickly freshened up in the bathroom before embracing the white pillow and sheets. Experiencing longing again, she felt her consciousness drift away. In the dream world, Selina saw boundless green meadow terraform the vicious land she had seen months prior. Then, it sprouted trees that are already adult, mountains and rivers was made just through her will. She watched silently, and out of nowhere, everything withered, decayed, and got sewn back to how Selina see fit. Yes. If it were the true dream world I'm having, I should have been able to easily dispatch Megos and the tree. Their forms would be the dream world itself by then. Selina deduced melancholically. Buzz. At that moment, standing at the center of the spiraling mural-like vines, Selina saw that multiple segments had fireflies swarming them. Kothi, Yuzur and Isabel. Selina was elated that she would finally hear news regarding Aldesh town in South Continent. But I don't want to deal with them here. I don't have the mood for it. Selina bitterly willed the segments to instead hear the prayers of her believers. Mrs. White. Sob. I've finally escaped using Traveler's Ring. Hick. Dylan gave me. But Dylan. He was left there. He didn't destroy his own voodoo self. Selina's eyes fell disheartened by the news. However, she saw that it still continues. I am now at White Rose Corps. Its branch in Backlund. I have confessed about my identity and they've accepted me. I was offered a chance to become Sequence 9 Savant if I'm able to give sufficient intel about the Rose School of Thought. I won't divulge your existence. Thank you for guiding me, Your Grace. Please, allow me to remain in department to you. Misfortune is that beside which good fortune leans. Selina muttered, mixed with happiness and despondence. After taking a short while to adjust her emotions, Selina willed another vine to echo the prayer behind it, from Uzur. O great white maiden. Piolo and I have come to bear great news. Today is the grand opening of the Maiden's White Opera and Theatre. The steelworks and construction operatives we've been mingled and using the funds had bore fruit. Initially, the estimate time the construction is done will be by December. Thankfully, to Your Grace's blessing, the processing had progressed faster. With this, White Cross Pharmaceutical Company will be established no later than this year. There was a clear joy in the prayer's tone. Selina smiled ruefully as she mused, you two make quite a dynamic money launderers. Pleased, she turned to another segment and heard the prayer, Mrs. White, I am to inform the recent activities of the Rose School of Thought Temperance and Indulgent. The latter member seemed to desire an artifact known as Crimson Corona from the Temperance. In another note, the Indulgent had gained an increased member with strange abilities in the recent month. Demonist members were also spotted mingling with Parliament members. Selina finally closed the channel and muttered, Demonist sect. Crimson Corona and strange abilities of the Rose School of Thought. That reminded of Hanged Man's intel. The fool's remarks hinting of being brought to light. Something must be brewing in Backlund. I hope it'll be okay. After letting the gentle breeze carry her stress away, Selina used the time stroll inside the dream world, just allowing herself to breathe and process the events of her and Dunn's death. I'll check Captain's tomb next thing tomorrow before going back. Chapter 241, Two Flowers. At the break of dawn. Right before the distant steeples was illuminated by the waking sun. The heavy rain of the night had calmed down at Raphael Cemetery. However, it left a reminder of it, with the soil being loose, mud all over and puddles from different places. Selina raised her heeled boot and continued to walk, searching for Dunn's tomb and hers. With the help of fallacy, she soon arrived upon a tomb after searching for almost 15 minutes. Selina finally saw Captain's monochrome photo. It had a gentle expression, high hairline, gray eyes, nothing unusual compared to before. Under Dunn's photo was his name, date of birth, date of death, and epitaph. The true guardian. The most trusted partner. The captain forever. Selina gazed in silence, completely petrified. Somehow her sight grew blurry for some baffling reason. She felt as though she had returned to that day again. She saw the captain turn his head to everyone and wink. He spoke with a mellow and relaxed voice. We saved Tingen. I'm sorry, Captain. I didn't got to accompany you. Selina suppressed in silence. No matter where you go, carry yourself away from grief. As Nighthawks, it's one of our restraints. Life without constraints is meaningless. Selina recalled this quietly. She suddenly leaned in and whispered, Thank you, Captain. We'll miss you. Saying that, she drew a crimson moon over her chest and sincerely bade a final farewell. After mourning to her heart's content, Selina was prepared to leave. However, right as she takes a turn, she suddenly saw a tomb with her own photo on it. She wore a gentle smile in monochrome, wearing an officer's suit and braided bun hair. Right now, her hair is simply tied to a bun. As her heart tightens, she saw the inscription and reads, The best, caring and loving future elder sister. The best future sister. The best colleague. She bent her legs to lower herself down and merely watched as the wind blew onto it, seemingly feeling the sorrowness and despondent of Melissa and Besson. They'll be utterly baffled when they see me again. Selina tried to be optimistic as she caressed her tombstone above it. Right, maybe my pocket watch is in there. Selina abruptly stood up and looked for a grave watcher's shack. It didn't take her long to find it at a distance. Returning back with a shovel in hand, she dug her own grave, saw that there's some splats of dim crimson, but she didn't thought much of it. When the shovel hit a wooden lid, Selina lowered herself and opened it. It was like looking to a mirror. She saw her silver hair cascading right at her should length, long white eyelashes that were closed and pale thin lips. She looked mesmerizing, like a sleeping princess. Selina is really beautiful. She remarked at herself ruefully before seeing the silver pocket watch beneath her own dead body's hands. It still bore her initials, the one Klein sought with effort. After pulling it out, Selina didn't waste any time to close the lid and bury her dead husk back into grave. Let's just say, there's two Selinas. Selina humored melancholically, clutching the pocket watch tighter and opened it to tell the time. It's not working anymore, likely that Melissa configured it in respect to the dead. Phew. She sighed. All right, fallacy, let's return home and spook Klein. Meow, Klein is dead. Huh? Selina's ears buzzed. She turned to the cat perched onto her tomb and asked, who is dead? Klein. Mr. Klein Moretti. Meow, fallacy's tone was bitter. Selina's lips opened but she closed it. You're lying. Fallacy stood up, leaped down and began walking. Meow, you can follow me. Her heart sank. Selina clutched the pocket watch tightly in her fingers and followed her companion. They arrived on another tombstone. On it was Klein's black and white photograph, a very scholarly photograph. Thud. Selina lost grip of the pocket watch and it fell from her hand, landing on the mud, stained with soil. Subconsciously, she raised both of her trembling hands, she covered her mouth and tears grew until it streams down her chin. K. Klein. Her voice was weak and quivering. Meow, I'm sorry, said Fallacy. Reaching closer to the tomb. Selina read the epitaph written below Klein's monochrome photo. The best elder brother. The best younger brother. The best colleague. Everything around Selina suddenly blurred, as if the focus was onto the tomb that laid there peacefully. We'll return home. I promise. Idiot. Stupid. Stubborn. Mulish. Brain dead. Inconsiderate. Selina listed the amount of fear, angst, loneliness and sorrow as she squatted down and buried her face in her arms. You. Then finally, she couldn't add any more. She cried as she wept. Her tears wouldn't stop falling. The sounds of a sobbing woman made the cemetery turn gloomy, as if a banshee is present. After an extended period of time, where twilight began to peek in the horizon, Selina stood up. She forced her trembling hands to wipe her tears. Again, and again, and again. Finally, she bent down and picked up her silver pocket watch. She gazed at it and saw the S initials frozen in its silver luster. No matter what, carry yourself from grief. There's beauty in that. It's called progression. Captain. Old Neil. And now, you. Selina couldn't control another emotions from erupting. Her heart ached and she felt she's now truly alone. Now, it only took her 10 minutes to collect herself again, a little bit more stable. Her bun-tied rosy brown hair coursed gently in the wind as she looked at a distant horizon. In the midst of her emotions, she muttered, progression. Restraints. After that, she turned for Klein's grave, caressed his photo that was placed there on top of the epitaph. Int Zangwil. Lenivus. Marvik. Selina muttered as she listed names that she will remember throughout her life. Suddenly, she bent her legs and took something out of her baggage, her wide-brimmed mocha-shaded sun hat. Selina wore the sun hat, anchored it with her left hand as she stood up, securing the suitcase with the other. Then, right as the wind blows through the north, she muttered, something she didn't have the chance to say, I love you too, Klein. May you rest in peace. As a former Nighthawk, a Nighthawk who had to regularly patrol Raphael Cemetery, Selina was quite familiar with the routes of the guards, as well as its surroundings. She managed to leave the cemetery just in time without causing any alarms. She followed the gravel road into Tingen, using the shade of the trees as cover. The morning dew and the distant trees had their peaks are slowly illuminated by the cast of the sun. Selina walked in silence with Fallacy beside her. She would sometimes consider her plan for revenge, sometimes thinking back to the time she spent with the captain, sometimes recalling old Neil's hidden grief beneath his humorous facade and Klein's advices on how to save money. What am I now? Am I just a banshee? Just a sinister phantom out to seek revenge? Meow, you're Selina Roy, and you are my master. My lady. Fallacy remained at equal pace as it leaped from time to time due to the puddles. Selina grinned gently. However, it didn't stop her brooding thoughts. Fallacy lifted its small head and big round eyes that would occasionally hide from its thick fur to ask, Meow, where are we going now? Hearing that, Selina looked ahead in silence. It took her some time to answer, and when she did, there was anguish in her tone. I feel that there will be opportunities for us to grow. To grow more powerful. But then, she restrained her welling emotions as she smiled gently. Recalling Yuzur, Kothi, and her believers' situation in the capital city. To the land of hope, the city of cities, Backlund. Finally reaching the train station. Selina noticed the brimming platform filled with passengers from different places. It reminded her of how she first came into Tingen. The soft, exhilarating freedom that came after severing her clutches from Milo. But now, that same sensation for returning back brought a tearing ache. She clutched her grasp of the suitcase. The same mocha-shaded sun hat fits her head, as from the first time she arrived and for her departure. Selena always wore a braided bun hairstyle. However, when she saw her image on a glass wall of the cashier, she saw that her dyed hair no longer frames her past looks. So even if I returned, they'd be skeptical of me being Selena. She turned and booked a ticket for 2 o'clock half-mindedly. Here. It takes about 4 hours to get from Tingen to Backlund by train. A luxurious first-class seat cost about £0.75, or 15 soldi. A second-class seat cost 10 soldi, or half a pound. The packed, poorly maintained third-class seats were rather cheap at only 5 soldi. Selena bought a seat for first class and waited outside to gaze at the sceneries of Tingen. To try and rekindle those times again. To feel the fresh air and to reminisce. Fallacy is by her side even if they stood. When it was finally time, the platform became packed with people. Falling into a daze by the amount, she absently looked around. Selena suddenly found a gentleman in parallel to her on the side. Just like her, he seems to be leaving as well. The gentleman's physique made her thought of a certain someone. Klein. She instinctively said. But her hands clenched tighter. The man had similar side profile to him. Same demeanor, equal posture. However, reality dictates his condition. That he's already in a tomb. He's dead, as much as Selena wanted to rush toward him. A pang driven by truth kept her from going. In the end, she stayed. Klein is already gone. She turned around and faced the pouring gates. Witnessing different faces storm the station until the train has seats available. Once again, after seemingly long period of time. Selena patted her knitted dress. There it was, the revolver of her father, intact by a leg strap holster. Ensuring that her only weapon that accompanied her from arriving didn't fell away. Selena took a heavy and difficult step. Ding. But then, an announcement. A train will be arriving from North Winter County an hour after. An hour after. Suddenly. It occurred to her. Plap. Unexpectedly, she opened her silver pocket watch. Blurred on the corner of her eye was Fallacy, the black cat watching her with confusion. There's still time. Selena remembered that the return of the Count begins at 1 o'clock and ends an hour later. It's now 1:50. She thought about Melissa, a responsible sister she never realized she needed. Benson, who would crack cold jokes in the table. Both would ask her what's for dinner and breakfast, and Klein, who would report to her each night. Recalling these, Selena was in dismay that she'll be leaving without having to see them. Ah, excuse me, she turned around. Her melodious voice resounded as the passengers clustered in. In this stampede, she swam her way back to the entrance. Klein took his pocket watch out, snapped it open and saw the longer hand moved. He already bade farewell to his siblings. The yellow chrysanthemum costed him almost £1. But its value was equal. Upon tipping his top hat, he saw the gates pouring in. Multiple faces brushed past him. However, instead of saying anything in his mind, Klein allowed himself to be affected by the streams of passengers. And in the midst of this, the rush of people suddenly made him turn to the other side. Due to the many heads bobbing from his periphery, he could only see a glimpse of a mocha-shaded sun hat. The height and width was the same. He had an exceptional memory thanks to the clown potion being digested. Selena. Klein felt a sharp ache in his heart. Immediately he thought. Are you? He's mistaken. Yes. Perhaps he's mistaken. She was just resurrected a bit late. She's a transmigrator, the grey fog wouldn't let her be. She's alive. The hopes still haven't left him. At that moment, his pupils dilated. He turned and tried to challenge the currents of people entering the platform. Excuse me. Excuse me. He gripped his suitcase, he gritted his teeth, he thought of many things, but the most important one of them was how to catch and greet her. Never to let go again. Ha. Ha. Klein finally managed to get where he thought the lovely lady recently stood. But sometimes, reality isn't what we expect it to be, and a heart-wrenching truth greeted him. In the sea of faces. The one he sought to find. Expecting a teased greeting and a surprised warm smile abruptly made him pause in silence. There was no one. Anyone. Waiting for him at the end. The black cat Fallacy followed behind her closely as once she bought another ticket, took another carriage and alighted. Selena searched everywhere in the municipal square. Luckily, she saw Melissa in time. In a black dress, paired with white gloves and black veiled hat. Benson was in a shirt, vest, trousers, coat, and hat, all in black. They both had numb, sullen expressions. They're still there. They have just watched the return of the Count and was about to return home. The erected tents burned brighter under the sun. Many clowns and acrobats came around the people. Melissa, is that bones showing on you? And Benson. You look like a zombie. Selina's immediate instinct was to return home and prepare dinner. However, she's aware she cannot do that again. Her heart winced in pain seeing them like how she saw Klein was when she was just gone for a day. They're about to leave. Selina suppressed her urges and turned for fallacy. Together, they found a route the siblings might take. After seeing the strange and mysterious clown left, Melissa was torn and at a loss. The golden chrysanthemum that rests onto her palm stirs an odd reflection of a certain someone. A person they held dearly in the face plastered in the shades of primary colors. Just then, when Benson and Melissa was about to strode a heavily populated street, a woman wearing a wide-brimmed mocha-shaded sun hat strode past them. Their shoulders brushed and due to the woman's hastiness, Melissa tripped. Ah. A hand caught her right arm. Oh. Sorry, are you okay? Melissa staggered to regain her balance. I am all right, she said, still trying to be polite. But when she lifted her head to see the woman's face, the sunlight obscured her vision. She instinctively covered her face with a hand. Benson was infuriated, perhaps due to something else that kept stirring his emotions. It made him blurt out, "Miss, you do not own this street. Could you be more responsible?" During this moment, he was prone to enrage. He can't help it. But instead of refuting, the woman smiled under her sun hat that concealed her eyes except for her lips. Those luscious but thin mouth chuckled. Benson and Melissa was taken aback, seeing the young girl stand again. The woman, whose face remained behind the sun hat, pointed at the flower. "Did you buy that?" she said softly. Melissa was a bit unsure of how to interact with her, so she simply answered, "Yes." Meow. Then suddenly, a fluffy black-furred cat with green eyes appeared from the woman's heels. It caressed itself against her. Fallacy. Melissa was hit by a sudden realization that she lifted her gaze up. She was trying to peek through the woman's sun hat. Her first thought was Selina, but the rosy brown hair made it difficult for her to confirm. Hence, all she could do was to validate it from her face, to which even the sunlight hinders her to see. Even if her brother is gone, at least leave a sister to stay. Thank you for accepting, Selina. Suddenly, the woman's voice spoke. It was calm and gratified. Both Melissa and Benson fell into a momentary daze when they heard her resume. I'll be taking Fallacy back. Then, the lady followed up with a flower from her side. The same as the one Melissa held but with different color. Here, she smiled softly. The lady then resumed her walk. They each saw her silhouette slowly fleeting in the distance. Casting her gaze down, Melissa now held two variations of the same flowers. The golden chrysanthemum and the silver chrysanthemum. One signifies happiness and the other signifies peace. It was beautiful, colorless, and an untainted memento, bidding farewell. End of the first volume. Chapter 242, Author's Afterwards Notice. Hey, Rolling Ball, previously Falling Ball, here. I am proud to announce the ending of Volume 1. Actually, this is my first time making an actual novel. I used fanfic and chose Lord of the Mysteries first because of how complex the world is and I love the power system and casts. And I need to practice first on storytelling. Unfortunately, for now the story is coming to a postponement. Because, drum roll, I'm making my own novel. Anyway, it will indeed be sad to leave behind Selina and Klein. For spoilers and anticipation of the future, Selina will be a part of an opera as a songbird intending to unravel this world by entering the high-class society. Possibly meeting Audrey and becoming a duo. I am excited for Volume 2 but also very melancholic that I'll have to bid farewell for now. As for the original story I had in mind, it revolves around the concept of a liminal hub with doors connecting to worlds. If you want to check it sometime in the future. Well, funny thing is that I haven't thought of the name yet. Anyway, it might change as it only had one chapter currently. I am so happy and glad you've come all the way to the end of the volume. I hope it was a fun read for you and sorry if I overextend the chapters. The reason why I can't continue Volume 2 yet is that I am now in college and I plan on getting my engine for a career start alongside my studies. However, I would be very glad if you could leave a review. That way I'll be able to look back and see how I can improve myself. Thank you for everything. As always, feedbacks are and will always be welcome.